First today is a mysterious case. 47 years ago, a body of a young woman was found on a roadside in Hertfordshire, apparently a victim to a suspected hit and run. But detectives have never been able to identify who she was or inform her family and friends. But today, you might hold the answers.
I would hope that there is somebody out there would have remembered her. It will put an end to this and she can rest in peace. Hitchhiking was a way of getting around from place to place. Back in the 70s, it was the norm. Times are a little bit different then.
In the early 70s, David Liversidge, his wife Barbara, and their one-year-old son lived in the Bedfordshire town of Stotfold. Back then, he worked as a delivery driver.
It wasn't unheard of for me to pick up somebody and bring them home and they doss on the settee or we'd give them a spare bedroom. If I was going somewhere near where they were heading the next day, I would say, well, stay overnight and then I'll take you up there tomorrow, you know.
In February 1972, David was doing a delivery in South London.
It was a dreadful day. The weather was horrendous. It was one of those days where daylight didn't appear at all. I saw a figure walking past and they put the hand out and I pulled up. They got into the car and they threw the bag in and I asked them where they come from and she spoke in broken English in French.
The woman told David her name was Odell and that she was here because she was studying in Cambridge. It wasn't far from David and Barbara's home, so he offered to put her up.
Over the evening as we were talking, she sort of said she was hoping to get a job. And I said, well, if you're looking just for a job, my place is desperate for staff. And they started her straight away. And she stayed, and it was like 6 months since she stayed.
Odell told the couple that she had a sister who lived near Paris, but talked very little about her life and never revealed her last name.
She didn't talk about other people. She was pretty quiet. She kept herself to herself. But she seemed to be quite happy staying around our place.
She was a lovely girl, but we couldn't speak French and she wasn't very good at English.
Yeah, she was just somebody that was in our life.
One day, in August 1972, Odell asked the couple for a lift to Cambridge.
She said she was going to Cambridge in September to start at an English language school. All I saw was an address that she got in Cambridge. We just drove up and that was the end of it. I knocked on the door, said, I have a young lady here, are you expecting her? And she, yes, I am. Bring her in. And Odell walked straight past me, straight down the hall, and I went, well, cheerio then. And that was the end of it, and I never saw her again.
Two and a half years later, in the early hours of the 18th of February 1975, a young woman was walking along the A1 near Baldock in Hertfordshire. A body was discovered. The woman seemed to have been the victim of a possible hit and run. Police couldn't establish who she was. But 35 years later, in 2010, came this image of the dead woman's face, created by forensic artists at the University of Dundee.
I saw in the newspaper a picture which I instantly recognised, and my wife was working in the back grooming the dogs, and I walked round there and I said, who do you think that is? And she went, well, that looks like Odell. And I went, yeah, she's been run over.
David and Barbara contacted the police. But because Odell revealed so little about herself to the couple, her full identity remains a mystery.
Just find it very strange, really. Very sad. You just think that her sister will probably be sitting there wondering where her sister's been for 50 years. But it's so very sad that there's a young girl being buried in Stevenage And somebody in that family must be thinking, where is she?
I'm now with Dave Grimstead from Missing People charity Locate International. And Dave, we just heard a bit about the victim there, but what have you been able to establish as to just who she was?
I mean, since that appeal went back out in 2010, people first saw that image, the facial image that was done by the specialist at Dundee University. David and Barbara immediately recognised this as somebody they knew. We know that when she was with David and Barbara, she talked about her sister, talked about her mother. And you can imagine the pain that they've endured over the years, not knowing what happened to this young woman who David and Barbara knew her as Odell or Odile, maybe had the surname of Ludic. She had fair hair, hazel eyes, and she had a piercing to her right ear, but she seemed at ease hitchhiking across the country, and at some stage she talked about going to Newquay and hiking down there to see friends. And obviously then we've got the language school as well.
OK, so she was often seen at the time to be wearing a coat similar to what we've got in the studio here. What other clothing was she wearing at the time when she was found?
I mean, we're hoping that the combination of the Afghan coat and the image that has been done, together with the other clothes that she was wearing, which was a brown leather waistcoat, a white Chelsea blouse and a chiffon scarf, and she had black jeans as well.
OK, now, crucially, what she didn't have was identification when she was found.
Yeah, she had no belongings with her on that day, so no shoes. David and Barbara talk about a haversack bag that she would have had with her, and they also described quite a distinctive copper ring that wasn't a proper ring. It was taken from a piece of plumbing pipe that she'd fashioned into a ring. None of those belongings have been found, and obviously she's found at the side of the road, no belongings, no shoes, and we don't know what happened to her prior to that accident.
So much of this is still a mystery, and the police at the time thought this was a hit and run, and sadly no details of that vehicle have been established.
No details of that vehicle, and we know from the reports at the time that a witness saw this lady on the side of the A1 in the early hours of the morning, about 5:30 in the morning, on the 18th of February at the A1 near Baldock. So a busy piece of road, and we don't know what she was doing immediately before that accident.
How can our viewers help you today? Because you're confident people may still be able to assist with this despite the passage of time.
So this is back in 1975, and we're asking people to think back to that time. And for us, it's really important to find this lady's name so that we can find justice for her, try and establish what it was that happened to her before that tragic event.
And if we're asking people to cast their minds back, there's some things that happened in 1975 that might help. So, for example, Margaret Thatcher, she'd just become the leader of the Conservative Party at the time. Bye Bye Baby by Bay City Rollers was top-selling single. Jaws, a blockbuster film. These things can help people cast their memory back. And recently you've had a case where, from the same time, you've had a result.
Certainly back in 1975, later in that month, you had the Moorgate disaster, and then later in the summer, you had the Nebworth Festival where Pink Floyd were playing. And since an appeal that we did on another case, we found the name of a person from 1975. So you may be watching this and you may see that image. It may resemble somebody you knew. Come forward. OK,
Dave, thank you. Well, can you help solve this truly sad mystery? If you have any information, the number to call is 08000 468 999. It's completely free. Our lines are open until midday. You can also text us anytime, 63399.
First today, though, it's the murder of much-loved Valerie Neil, whose short stay in hospital turned into a nightmare. Now, this film does contain some descriptions that you may find upsetting.
When she went into hospital, you believe that she's going to be safe, going to be well looked after. To think that somebody did that, it's horrible. Auntie Val, she was just such a wonderful, lovely person. She was fun, she loved people, she enjoyed life, and she was kind of the hub of the family. And she had this really, really lovely skill of making you feel so special and so loved. Her health on the whole was good. She was active. She'd worked hard all her life and she was just enjoying her later years.
On Monday, the 12th of November 2018, 75-year-old Valerie Neil was at home with her husband Bill. During the evening meal, she suffered a stroke and was admitted to Blackpool Victoria Hospital.
She was checked over and she was doing okay. She was sat up, she was communicating, she was talking. Obviously, she was going to have challenges in her recovery, but we were all very hopeful of a positive outcome. Her children wanted to stay with her that evening, but the hospital said, you know, really she's in the best place that she can be and there's no need, she's going to be absolutely fine.
But later, during her first night in hospital, Valerie's condition took a turn for the worse and she suffered a second stroke.
The immediate family went to the hospital and they were told that the prognosis or the outlook wasn't going to be really very good at all. So they made that decision to not have any further treatment, and obviously we were just waiting then for the inevitable. We spent some time with her. I remember telling her that the sun was shining and that there was that the sky was blue and that just to relax.
Valerie never regained consciousness. 5 days after being admitted to hospital, she died, surrounded by her family.
Losing her left a huge gaping hole in the family. And it was hard because, you know, the week before she was fine and then the week later she wasn't with us anymore.
In the following days, a post-mortem examination was carried out to try to establish what factors led to her death.
We weren't really looking for answers to anything. I think we just expected the post-mortem to say that she died of a stroke.
But the results of the post-mortem were so alarming that the pathologist contacted detectives at Lancashire Constabulary.
It's a conversation I'll never forget. But the pathologist had established that actually she had sustained a serious violent injury that had led to her death.
Valerie had been assaulted, possibly sexually, which had led to fatal internal bleeding. And the post-mortem established that the attack had happened whilst Valerie was a patient at the hospital.
It took me a while to process it, really, and I couldn't believe that somebody could have been assaulted in this way, such a serious assault, whilst in hospital, and I really was truly shocked. It's one of the hardest things in this investigation was telling Mrs. Neil's family that their mother and grandmother, who they thought died of a stroke, had actually died as a result of a serious violent attack.
To think that somebody did that to a lovely, lovely person at a time when she was helpless, at her most vulnerable, where she couldn't shout out, she couldn't defend herself.
The police launched a murder investigation, but evidence has been hard to come by.
This has been a particularly challenging investigation due to the fact that we were only alerted to the incident some weeks later after Mrs. Neil died. The forensic opportunities on the ward were significantly reduced. So our investigation has been very much focused around identifying people who have been onto the stroke unit during the relevant times. In order to do that, we have interviewed thousands of individuals, including staff members, other patients, visitors to those patients, just to piece together the timeline of events.
But 4 years later, the attacker still hasn't been identified.
There's a real worry to the investigation and to the hospital that this could be just one of a number of attacks. This may be at the hands of somebody who is a predator and who may have committed previous attacks of this nature and may continue to do so.
We're left with a huge wound that can't even begin to heal until we find out who's responsible for doing that. And so that we can get justice.
Well, we're joined now by DCI Jill Johnston from Lancashire Police. Jill, thanks so much for being in the studio with us today. This is a truly horrendous case. What happened to Valerie was at a time when she was at her most vulnerable in what should have been a place of safety. Can we just start by reassuring people that this type of crime is extremely rare, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is. I've never heard of anything quite like this ever happening before, particularly in a hospital setting. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. So just talk us through what you believe happened to Valerie.
Well, we know that Mrs Neil was admitted to Blackpool Victoria Hospital on the evening of Monday, the 12th of November 2018. And she had suffered a stroke, but she was doing okay and her family were with her. So shortly before midnight, they left the hospital, and by that time, Mrs Neil was on the stroke unit. But sadly, she deteriorated overnight. She suffered a second stroke, and that led to the family being called back in the following morning, and then they remained with her until she passed away, sadly, on the Friday of that week.
There was a post-mortem as well that happened post her passing, and what did that show up?
Well, at the time of her death, her family believed she died of a stroke, naturally, and it was only at that time of the post-mortem that we all learned that actually Mrs Neil had been seriously assaulted, possibly a sexual assault, but certainly one that's left such a serious internal injury that Mrs Neil bled to death whilst in hospital.
It's shocking. It's a lot to process as well, isn't it? And this attack all happened in quite a short time frame, didn't it? Just tell us a bit more about that.
So we know that she was attacked whilst in hospital, and we know that it's happened at some point after her family left her on that Monday night, and then up until the Wednesday afternoon. We know that Mrs Neil was on one of the main bays in the stroke unit when she was first admitted, and then she was transferred into a side room on that Tuesday afternoon, and she remained there until she passed away.
This has been a wide-reaching and quite challenging investigation for you and the team. Jill, what have you learnt to date?
Well, over the past 4 years, we've obtained an awful amount of information, which has allowed us to build a minute-by-minute timeline of events that we know to have happened on the stroke unit, and that has included interviewing hundreds and hundreds of witnesses. But sadly, despite all of that, it's still not led us to identify who's responsible. And the challenges are made even worse with the fact that there is no CCTV. And due to the length of time between Valerie's death and the post-mortem, the forensic opportunities were massively reduced.
Yeah, of course. But it is just so alarming to think that this is something that happened in hospital on a stroke unit. Now, we've had this statement from Blackpool Victoria Hospital's chief executive who says our thoughts are firmly with Mrs Neil's family and we remain committed to discovering the truth about how she died. The Trust has worked closely with Lancashire Police since the start of their inquiries and continues to do so. Once again, we urge anyone with information, however small the detail, to step forward and help the investigation team. Given the location, does this change the nature of the investigation at all, Jill?
Well, I think it does, doesn't it? Because the fact that this has happened in a hospital setting is of grave concern to everyone. And we've worked tirelessly along with the hospital to get justice for Mrs Neil and her family, but also to stop this ever happening again. So we need to identify who's responsible.
Yeah, of course. And we heard from Valerie's niece, Lisa, in the film. They're absolutely heartbroken that this has happened. We're over 4 years on now. They're still looking for answers. They need justice, don't they? I mean, how are they doing?
They really are an incredible family, and it is clear to see that Mrs Neil was absolutely adored by all of them. So not only did they have to come to terms with her loss, to learn that she died in this horrific way, it was a huge shock to them, obviously. But they fought tirelessly over the past 4 years to get justice, and also are just desperate for answers.
So for anybody that's watching at home this morning, how can they help? What information do you need today?
Well, I'm asking anyone, whether you were working perhaps or visiting Blackpool Victoria Hospital in November 2018, just to think back. Did you see anyone acting suspiciously or anything that maybe just didn't feel right? Did you hear anything? Or has somebody spoken to you either at that time or later? Or is it that the inquiry hasn't managed to trace you, where you were a visitor to somebody in that time? Please, please come forward and share that information with us, no matter how insignificant you might think it is. Please, please share it.
And finally, there is a reward in connection to Crime Stoppers as well, isn't there?
Yes, so if you are uncomfortable contacting the police, then you can contact the independent charity that is Crime Stoppers. They've offered a £20,000 reward for information that leads to a conviction, and that would be completely anonymous.
Jill, thank you very much. Well, as we said, this is a rare crime in an even rarer setting, and obviously finding the person responsible is critical. So if you have any information, no matter how small, our phone lines are open until midday, and the number to call is 08000 468 999. Now, in 2017, during a home extension project, builders made a gruesome discovery when they found a set of skeletal remains of a man buried in a back garden in Wimbledon. Now, the identity of the male remains unknown. I'm joined by DCI Kate Kieran, who's working on identifying this individual and to try and understand what happened to him. Kate, welcome to the programme. This really is a mystery, isn't it? Firstly, just tell us how you became involved in this case.
Yeah, well, as you said, in 2017, a skeleton was found in the back garden of this house in Wimbledon. And police were called to that, and we quickly established that there was a shallow grave, 4 of them, that the body looked like it had been dismembered. So we started an investigation to try and identify that male and see how he died.
So what is the process of identification after you've discovered a body?
Well, normally we'd look at fingerprints, but obviously this was a skeleton. We'd look at DNA, but actually there was no DNA matches for this male, and we think that's because he dates back to the 60s and there was no DNA database that would have been there then. We'd also look at dental normally, and you can see the teeth. But again, without knowing who he is, we wouldn't have any sort of comparisons to make with that.
There were some clues that helped you along the way, though, weren't there? In particular, his quite distinctive appearance.
Yeah, so our forensic experts looked to this, and actually we can tell quite a lot from this male. So he would have been from the Indian subcontinent, about 5'7", between 35 and 55 years of age, quite robust in appearance in life. But also, you can see he had quite a large skull compared to sort of an average male skull compared there. So he would have been quite distinctive in appearance, we think.
And as you say, you can see the kind of holes in the skull at the top there.
Yeah, and actually that's from neurosurgery. So he would have had neurosurgery, or trepanning as they call it, to relieve pressure in the brain. But even then, there's no medical records from back in the 60s that would have helped with that.
Gosh, so thinking of other clues, actually his clothes helped because some of them were preserved, they were intact, weren't they? How did that proceed further the investigation?
Yeah, so actually that was really interesting. So there was a lot of clothing preserved. He was smartly dressed, a shirt, a silk tie, socks and shoes. So we sent these off to a clothing expert, and they looked at thread, patterns, colours and the materials and dated them to the 60s for us.
And as well as all this, you conducted your usual lines of inquiry, didn't you?
Yeah, so from a police point of view, we would have looked at when we think he was murdered and buried. So we've spoken to the remaining people who are still alive, who lived in the house at the time. They can't help. There's no DNA match between this male and that family. So all our usual lines of inquiry really didn't bring us anything.
This really is a mystery, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, you work closely with forensic anthropologists who are able to reconstruct an image of the individual. In fact, we've got the 3D image here, which I think is fascinating. Just talk us through how this was done and how it helps with the investigation.
So this was created from the skull. They build up sort of the muscles that would have been in the face and create this 3D image here. And we know from our experts that this is 100% accurate with what he looked like. So the facial features are 100% accurate. The one thing that we can't tell is the hairstyle, the exact skin tone and the exact sort of eye colour. But that's what he would have looked like. And it's obviously with what he would have been wearing at the time.
I find that incredible, actually. This is the face of the individual who was found. It must have been something quite amazing seeing the face for the first time.
Yeah, you can, and sort of looking into his eyes, you know, it really brings it to life.
Yeah, and how long does something like this take?
This took our forensic scientists months to create for us.
So you've got this image here now. How can our viewers at home help with this case?
Well, it's about whether or not anyone is still out there who could recognise the male. Again, it would have been in the 60s, sort of in the Wimbledon area, but maybe not just limited to that area. Does anyone recognise him or hear stories of someone who might have gone missing or was murdered in that sort of area?
Yeah.
We're really hoping it jogs someone's memory.
Because at the end of the day, Kate, this is someone who was tragically murdered.
Yeah.
They could have family that are still alive now that don't know what happened to him.
No.
So any information that people might be able to give is vital, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Kate, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up with you again a little later on in the programme. That is a man throwing roof tiles down from a great height. But first, in September 2000, 21-year-old Vicky Glass went missing from Middlesbrough. Later that year, her body was found 19 miles away in Danby. Cleveland police have a new line of inquiry they're pursuing, and I'm joined now by Detective Chief Inspector Peter Carr from Cleveland Police Historic Investigation Unit. Welcome, Peter. We've appealed with you on this case before, but can you just remind us about Vicky as a person and her last known movements before she disappeared?
Yeah, so when Vicky was murdered in 2000, she was a 21-year-old vulnerable female. She was reported missing from home on the 27th of September 2000, and the last confirmed sighting we have of her is at the early hours of Sunday, the 24th of September 2000. Tragically, Vicky's body was found in a small stream in Danby in North Yorkshire on the 3rd of November 2000. A large-scale murder investigation was conducted, but unfortunately in 2004 that concluded with justice not brought. In 2021, Cleveland Police relaunched that murder investigation.
As you said, this is a really tragic case. Now, you've been working on the Cole case for 2 years now. You've managed to access some really significant CCTV. We can take a look at that footage now. Just talk us through, Peter, what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so this is the first time we've unearthed CCTV in the investigation of Vicky. She's positioned on the left-hand side. She's wearing light-coloured bottoms and a dark puffer jacket. This was taken on CCTV in the Cannon Park area of Middlesbrough, where we know Vicky frequented.
So this is really critical to the investigation because it gives you an even clearer picture of her movements before she disappeared, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's really, really significant in terms of what it gives us. We now know what Vicky was wearing at the time, and we can use CCTV that we've got to have a look to see if we can identify her any further on CCTV.
How else has this helped to bring the case forward?
Yeah, well, we've managed to speak to the friend, and the friend, interestingly, gives us some information that after that footage, Vicky goes to a lorry park near that location. She engaged in a conversation with a lorry driver who was described as male, large build, white, but had a significant distinctive mole on the side of his face. Vicky engaged in conversation with him, left some personal items with him. He gave her some cash, and there was an agreement for Vicky to return later on. That lorry driver has never been traced, and we're keen to speak to him. Absolutely.
Peter, let's take a look now at where Vicky was last seen. What can you tell us about this area?
Yeah, so this is an area that Vicky frequented. She was last sighted on Union Street, which is in Middlesbrough, junction with Eschwood Square. We know at this time it was about 4:20 on the early hours of Sunday, the 24th of September. Vicky was dropped off here by a taxi, got out of that taxi. When she did, she was fitting well. After that sighting, Vicky wasn't seen again.
It's been over 20 years since Vicky tragically died. It doesn't get any easier for the family, does it? It's a welcome bit of information, this CCTV and how it's progressing, but they're still desperate for answers, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been over 20 years now, and Vicky's family have got no closure. They don't know what happened to Vicky in her final hours. Tragically, Vicky's mum passed away a number of years ago. She died not knowing what happened to Vicky. We're absolutely determined to find out what happened and try and get some closure for the family and bring justice, not just for Vicky, but her family as well.
So for anybody that's watching at home this morning, what information information are you looking for? How can the public help?
Well, critically, we want to speak to the lorry driver who Vicky engaged in conversation with. So if anybody knows who that lorry driver is or might know his identity, or if the lorry driver itself sees this appeal, please come forward and speak to us. We also want to know about Vicky's movements before she went missing on Sunday the 24th of September, or if anybody sighted her after that last confirmed sighting.
And as we said, it's been a long time since this happened. People's allegiances may change. Someone that wasn't that confident to come forward then may do now.
Definitely. The passage of time, people's lives change. As you said, their allegiances change. We believe that somebody knows what happened to Vicky, and we would appeal for those people to come forward.
Peter, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appeals from this week.
First this morning, 2 teenagers who were sexually assaulted over 20 years ago have lived all this time not knowing who their attacker was. Can you help police find the man who harmed them?
What they must have been thinking at the time is quite horrific, really. It is quite remote, and being dragged into the woods and thinking that no one can hear you. It's awful. Something bad thinking about.
On Sunday, the 7th of April 2002, a 16-year-old girl in Harpenden was walking home.
She walked down past a local pub, the Marquis of Granby, which we know was quite busy at the time. And then she walked into Marquis Lane, which links onto Pigotts Hill Lane. And she'd just gone under the railway bridge, and then she sees a silver vehicle with nobody in it and thinks that's slightly out of place, but carries on walking. And then a man grabs her from behind, puts his hand over her mouth. He said if she didn't scream, he wouldn't hurt her. Drags her up a steep bank into a wooded area, and then pushes her to the floor and sexually assaults her. She was terrified, obviously, as you would be, and laid there. And it was only when he'd gone and she ran out onto the road and approached a jogger.
Stop! Please stop!
She was crying hysterically.
Are you okay?
2 months later, a 17-year-old girl was walking towards Harpenden town centre.
She saw a small red vehicle parked on the roundabout near the top of Pigotts Hill Lane, and as she turns the corner to go into town, a man approaches her from behind.
Don't scream. Don't say anything. Don't do anything.
He was just saying the same sort of thing. Don't scream, don't shout, don't do anything, and I promise I won't hurt you. And led her to the front passenger seat of that vehicle.
Get in.
He then goes and gets in the driver's seat, and he drove down Pigotts Hill Lane to exactly the same place where the first offence had taken place. It was then that he got out of the vehicle, opened the passenger door,
out,
and dragged her,
come on,
up the same bank to the same wooded area and sexually assaulted her.
Looking back, I was on a path of self-destruction that lasted 7 to 8 years. I became a master at disguising how I felt inside, even though internally I was completely broken. I hated myself and those around me.
These were horrific attacks. They were just awful. I can't even begin to think what those girls were going through at the time of those attacks. And we don't give up on cases like that.
Both girls gave a description of their attacker.
Mediterranean type appearance, mid to late 30s, fairly slim build but stocky, 5'6" to 8" tall.
DNA samples were taken from both victims, and when the results came back, they matched. The police were looking for just one man.
The initial investigation had a large amount of resources, house-to-house inquiries, forensic submissions, various media appeals.
What about what he was wearing?
Well, he was wearing sporty attire on that particular occasion.
You've got these tracksuit bottoms, and they're not the same, but they're pretty similar, aren't they?
Yeah, they're described as similar to worn by him on that day. And as you can see, they've got red piping down the side of both legs.
The Crimewatch appeal prompted dozens of people to come forward, naming potential suspects, but none matched the attacker's DNA profile.
The victims both affected, because there's always that question for them that this person is still walking free. We know who the offender is DNA-wise, and all we need is a name.
I never wanted that moment in my life to define me, even though it does. It has made me build a wall around myself. I'm definitely more guarded, untrusting of people. Deep down, it's always there, like a black cloud hanging over me.
It has been 20 years, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating, and we can't find him, and that's what we need to do.
I'm joined by DI Justine Jenkins from Hertfordshire Police, the senior investigating officer on this case. And these incidents are disturbing. The victims have led more than half their life not knowing who did this to them. Can you just start by recapping what we know about what did occur?
Yeah, of course. So the first attack happened on Sunday, the 7th of April 2002, when a young 16-year-old girl was walking back from a friend's house. As she turns into Pigotts Hill Lane, she sees the silver car with nobody in it. And as she walks through a set of bollards on Pigotts Hill Lane, a man comes up from behind her, puts his hand over her mouth and drags her into the wooded area where he sexually assaults her. 2 months later, on the 19th of June 2002, a 17-year-old girl is actually walking at the other end of Pigotts Hill Lane towards Harpenden, when again a man comes up behind her, he puts his hand over her mouth and guides her to a vehicle which is parked at the top of Pigotts Hill Lane, puts her in the front passenger seat and drives her down to exactly the same location where the first attack happened. Gets her out of the passenger seat and pulls her up into the wooded area, and again he sexually assaults her as well.
Absolutely chilling. Now, DNA has actually linked the offender to those two offences. You're confident it's the same person. You think he may be responsible for a third as well?
Yeah, that's right. So when we're reviewing the paperwork, there's actually a third attack that happens in March 2004, so nearly 2 years later, when a 12-year-old girl is walking again in Harpenden and a man comes up to her and drags her into a wooded area, and it's only for the sake of a dog walker that something more serious didn't happen to that girl.
Absolutely shocking. So what can you tell us about the offender?
So both of the first victims describe him very much similar. He's of Mediterranean appearance, mid to late 30s, fairly stocky arms and distinctive eyebrows.
Now, this image was created by one of the victims at the time, and it's worth saying that he would have aged 20 years or so from this.
Yeah, absolutely. So he would now be in mid to late 50s.
OK. Now, crucially, you're still looking to trace some people that could have witnessed what occurred. Tell me about the first witness.
Yeah, so with regards to the first offence, we know that there was a man and a young child, about 8 or 9 years, walking down Pigotts Hill Lane when the victim was walking towards her friend's house, so a little bit earlier, who were carrying fishing rods. And on the second attack, we know that as the vehicle comes to a stop, just before the victim is sexually assaulted, there is a cyclist that cycles past that vehicle.
Yeah, and all of those could be absolutely crucial to the investigation.
Absolutely.
If anyone's watching this now and they think they may be able to help, what do you need from them?
We just need a name, really, but any information that people can give, I'd just ask them to think back to 2002 and just see whether there is anybody they knew that fits that description.
Now, the DNA evidence is crucial. You can eliminate anyone that's not involved, but if anyone did need further incentive, there is a Crime Stoppers reward as well.
Yes, there is, yeah. The independent charity Crime Stoppers is offering £10,000 for information that leads to the conviction of this offender.
OK, Justine, thank you. So, if you did visit this area of Harpenden back in 2002, did you see or hear anything about these attacks? Perhaps you used to go fishing near that area and are one of the possible witnesses. The days again were the 7th of April and the 19th of June, both in 2002, and that third attack a couple of years later, 17th of March 2004. Cast your minds back. If you do have anything to share, then the number to call is 08000 468 999.
At bbc.co.uk.
First today, it's an appeal police have run with us before. It's the killing of mother of 3, Jennifer Kylie, whose murder remains unsolved. Can you help? For more than 18 years, Margaret Kylie has been grieving for her daughter.
I raised a perfect child. You know, she was sweet, loving, giving, ambitious. She was a nice girl, very nice girl, very pretty.
In 2005, 35-year-old Jennifer Kylie was murdered.
She was a very good kid. That's why it's so hard to take this in, that she's no longer with us. You know, that's the hard part.
Her killer has never been found. Jennifer's murder shocked the town of Eastbourne in East Sussex, where she lived, and was the subject of a major police investigation. But after 2 years, with no viable leads, the investigation was put on hold. However, since 2017, the police have been actively pursuing new lines of inquiry. Detective Superintendent Emma Heater now leads the investigation.
Old homicides that aren't solved are never filed. We assess them every couple of years to see if there are any new techniques, new technology, new forensic methods that we can apply to old cases to try and progress them.
In early 2005, Jennifer was living a transient life on the streets of Eastbourne. It hadn't always been like this. A few years before, Jennifer had been living in a house in London with her partner and 3 children.
She was just a normal mother, you know. She loved to play with her children. She would sit down on the floor and play with them. She was a good mum. She just loved her kids.
But shortly after the birth of her 3rd child, her mental health suffered and she struggled to cope.
I think she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And we tried to help her, but Jennifer was too proud. She was too proud.
By now, she had become a well-known character in Eastbourne, pushing her belongings around in an old buggy, wearing a distinctive long grey coat, and sleeping where she could.
She did seek support from charities such as the Salvation Army, so people would have known her from charitable organisations such as that.
Detectives were able to piece together her last known movements on the evening of the 21st of January, 2005.
Jennifer had spent the day with friends at an address in Upton Gardens. She'd come and gone from the address during the day.
After having a bath at her friend's house, Jennifer left the address at around midnight.
How are you doing?
And headed back.
I'm done.
Onto the streets.
At 1 o'clock in the morning, she is seen by a friend who knew her and recognised her.
Hello, Jenny.
Hello.
She was seen to be heading westerly along Eastbourne seafront in the direction of Holywell.
During the night, Jennifer had made her way down to the lower tier of the promenade near Holywell, finding refuge in a seafront shelter.
Eastbourne Prom, during the daytime, it's very busy. Lots of families walk here, dog walkers, runners. But at night, it's very different. It's very secluded, it's unlit.
At 5 in the morning, Jennifer's body was discovered by cleaners in the furthest shelter along the seafront towards Beachy Head.
So this is the beach shelter where Jennifer was found. The beach shelter has been partially reconstructed, so it's not exactly how it would have been in 2005. But when Jennifer was found by the cleaners, she was completely inside the shelter where you see the benches now.
Jennifer was found with multiple stab wounds. Her belongings were all piled on top of her, and she had been set alight.
I don't know how anybody could have done that. It's incomprehensible. She was no threat, but he took her life from her. And took mine too, to a certain extent.
Despite a major police investigation and a nationwide appeal on Crimewatch.
Well, please don't let Jennifer's killer get away with it. 3 children have lost their mother.
Police were not able to find her killer.
The biggest challenge to this investigation was probably Jennifer's lifestyle. There wasn't an address for us to go and search. She didn't use mobile phones. There wasn't a financial footpath. It was difficult to track down people that may have had contact with Jennifer. We didn't know if this is somebody who knew Jennifer or whether it was a stranger. This was a very, very complicated case to try and solve.
The investigation was reopened in 2011 and then again in 2017, when developments in forensics gave detectives a new line of inquiry.
We have now got new DNA at the scene, which is very significant for this investigation, but we need to find the person whose DNA that is. We really need the public to come forward and help us on this.
January saw yet another anniversary of Jennifer's murder. It is the 18th her mother Margaret has endured.
I think about her every day, but on her anniversary, I can't stop, I can't switch her off. You know, I get mad. Somebody somewhere knows who it is and what he's done. Just please come forward and let us know.
Jennifer's murder really is incredibly sad, and detectives have not given up the search to find the person responsible. Jennifer was last seen on Friday the 21st of January 2005 and had spent the day with friends in Harpenden Gardens, leaving around midnight. She was seen on CCTV at the Kentucky Fried Chicken shop on Langley Road, and then again at around 1 a.m. near Eastbourne Piers. She was spotted again by a friend walking along the promenade in the direction of Holywell. Just a few hours later, a member of the public discovered Jennifer's body in the shelter on the lower tier of the promenade. Now, there is one man who was seen by witnesses and was captured on CCTV the night of January the 21st, 2005, who police are still looking to trace. Now, he was described as having an Eastern European accent, around 5'10" tall and slim to medium build. His hair was short and light blonde. He had a roundish face, dominant cheek and jawlines, and what was described as a very straight nose. He was wearing a dark blue short jacket with a collar zipped right up to his chin, a pair of grey jeans and white training shoes. The police have the DNA of their suspect. They now just need a match. If anyone, for any reason, hasn't yet come forward but does have details about this case, police are urging you to please come forward. Now remember, that DNA can be used to eliminate people from this investigation as well as match the person responsible. You can contact us on 08000 468 999.
First today, Yuna Crown was killed 10 years ago and the man responsible has never been traced. Can you finally help Cambridgeshire Police track that person down and bring her murderer to justice? This film does contain some upsetting details.
I can't even imagine what she went through. It must have been horrendous. The fear of when she took her last breath. How much did she feel?
Yuna Crown and husband Ron lived in Wisbeach in Cambridgeshire for 40 years, until his death in 2009. They married in 1948 and ran a village post office together.
Yeah, they had a very happy life, I have to say. She really did enjoy life, as she did, well, right up to the end.
On Friday, the 11th of January 2013, Yuna went shopping with her niece and her niece's husband.
She was always ready on Friday mornings. She'd have her coat on ready and she used to say, "Do you know you're the first person I've seen this week?" It was like an outing. She would see people, it was company to her.
37.20 then, please.
Yuna then returned home to Magazine Lane. That was the last time she was seen alive.
On Saturday, the 12th of January 2013, we don't think Yuna went out during the day. We think that she stayed in the house. The normal routine would be for Yuna to watch some television and then go to bed around 10 o'clock. Yuna made a phone call just after 5 o'clock to a neighbour.
Yeah, I'm fine.
And that's the last contact that we know that she had with anybody. We believe that between 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock, somebody went to the house. Yuna's normally quite security conscious, wouldn't open the door to a stranger. Yuna was stabbed a number of times in the neck and in the chest area.
But the attacker wasn't finished.
There was an attempt made to burn her body. Obviously, her clothing was set alight whilst on the floor, and then there were other seats of fire located in the hallway and also in the kitchen by some towels on a rail. Our belief is that the person set the fires to try and hide evidence. Fortunately, none of the fires took hold, and obviously they didn't burn the rest of the house.
The following morning, Yuna's nephew-in-law, John, came to see her.
Auntie! I opened the front door. When I pushed it open, there was Yuna lying face down on the floor. The smell from the house was terrible, burning smell. Her clothing was burnt.
There wasn't any forced entry, so we think that she may know the person. Having checked the house, it wasn't ransacked, but we do believe there's £40 in cash missing because Yuna withdrew cash from Tesco's on the Friday night. At the time, I was a uniformed sergeant, and I brought in by the Major Crime Unit to run the house-to-house operation. It produced a number of inquiries, obviously some people of interest, but sadly nothing, unfortunately, led to finding an offender.
The police turned to Crimewatch for help.
Let's talk for a minute about the weapon there. We know she put up her hands. She was injured in the neck. She was at one point stabbed straight through the heart.
We don't believe the knife came from Yuna's house itself. The attacker probably brought it with them. From her injuries, we're able to establish it's probably a long-bladed kitchen knife, 25 centimetres long, and we haven't found that, so I need to find it.
Despite some promising calls, police were still not able to identify the offender.
There's been a number of arrests, but unfortunately we haven't been able to charge anybody at this stage. It's 10 years since the murder occurred, and I want to do the best I possibly can and find out who's responsible for this murder.
It absolutely haunts me. I can't imagine why anyone would want to do it. She wouldn't have stood a chance. I just can't believe. I find it very, very hard to come to terms with it, or well, I shall never come to terms with it. Heartbreaking.
Well, I'm joined by DCI Ian Moore, who is the SIO on this case. Ian, welcome back. 10 years on, as we heard from Judy, Yuna's niece, they're struggling to come to terms with what happened to her. How are the family coping?
Judy and John remain incredibly distressed about what happened to Yuna, and they're still seeking answers as to why somebody would do this to her.
Just remind us of the key details of what happened that night.
Yes, we know that on Saturday, the 12th of January 2013, Yuna was in her house, as we can see on the map, in Magazine Lane, which is on the outskirts of Wisbech. And we know that she made a call to a neighbour just after 5 p.m, and that was the last contact anybody had with her. We believe somebody entered the house or was in the house and then stabbed Yuna through the chest and the throat, and then also set some fires around the house as well to try and hide evidence.
This really is absolutely horrific. Now, you think that Yuna may have known her attacker or recognised the attacker. Why is that?
Yuna's very security conscious, so she would look out the window before opening the door just to see who it was out there. But obviously, we remain open-minded as to what's happened at the minute.
And did the attacker take anything?
We think there's about £40 in cash potentially missing because Yuna got that out on the Friday when she went to Tesco's, but not a lot really.
And as we heard in the film, as you said, we've got one theory as to what may have happened to Yuna, but that's certainly not the only theory that you're investigating, is it?
No, we're exploring a number of lines of inquiry, one of which might be that somebody was actually already inside the house and then attacked Yuna from inside.
So what information are you appealing for today?
We're just appealing for... We believe that the answers lie in the Wisbech community, and we're appealing for anybody to come forward and give information about what happened. They might have recognised somebody coming home smelling of smoke in the evening, or they might have had some extra money on them. But any detail, even small detail, we would urge people to come forward.
This has absolutely devastated the family. We heard from Yuna's niece, Judy, and John, Yuna's nephew-in-law. They really want answers. There may have been people 10 years ago that were too scared to come forward. They could have changed their minds now.
Yeah, definitely, and allegiances change over the years. Relationships are different. Maybe somebody knows something now and they're prepared to come forward.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a Crime Stoppers reward in connection to this case as well, which has been launched today.
Yeah, it has. The independent charity Crime Stoppers have launched a £20,000 reward today, seeking information that would lead to the conviction of Yuna's murderer. And people can report anonymously to Crime Stoppers, or they can contact police via the normal channels.
Ian, thank you very much. We will catch up with you again a little later in the show, but thanks for being with us this morning. Sir, do you remember anything at all that could help find Yuna's killer? If you do, then the number to call is 08000 468 999.
Get in touch.
Now, tomorrow marks 21 years since Edward Donnelly disappeared from his home in Sacriston, County Durham. Police believe he was murdered. I'm joined now by Detective Superintendent Lee Gosling. Lee, thanks so much for coming on the programme today. Can you just start by telling us a bit about Edward? What was he like as a person?
Yeah, so Edward was 53 when he went missing from Sacriston, a local miner in the colliery. Reported missing by his sister on March the 25th, 2002. Despite numerous inquiries and searches and over 300 people spoken to, he essentially vanished without a trace. On that basis, a murder investigation was launched, and we still think it was a murder today.
And he was a quiet and unassuming man, wasn't he? You're really trying to understand what happened.
He was. And that in itself is one of the reasons why we really need to find out what happened, because of the fact he was quiet and unassuming.
Absolutely. Well, let's go through some details, because we've got a still that was taken from some CCTV. This is from the day he disappeared. So this is the Edward on the morning that he disappeared. Just talk us through what we can see here.
Yeah, certainly. So we know that Edward visited Lloyd's Bank in Sacriston between 10 and 10:30 a.m. On the day he disappeared, withdrew £160 in cash. and we know that that took place about 3 hours before his last ever sighting.
Now, you've pieced together what you can of his final movements. In fact, we've got a map that just helps to illustrate it in a bit more detail. So let's talk through this. What have we got here, Lee?
Yeah, so we can see the bank visit there on the left-hand side, and then the very last sighting was on Plawsworth Road, just outside the Red Lion pub at about 13:45 hours, or just before. And we're really keen to understand what happened after that sighting, and you can imagine their family even more so.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just looking for answers, aren't they? It's been a long time without them. Can you just give us a bit more of a detailed description of Edward?
Yep, certainly. So Edward was 5'8" in height, mousy brown hair, pale skin, known locally as Eddie, lived with his sister, minor, as I say, quiet and unassuming, as you said earlier.
There are some unusual elements to this case, aren't there? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so sometime between the visit to the bank to draw out the £160 and being reported missing, the money, the bank book and his house keys ended up back in his home address. And we're really keen to understand how that happened and what allowed that to happen.
Yeah, of course, it's trying to put all these pieces together to build up the complete picture.
Indeed.
There were extensive searches conducted at the time. What did you glean from them?
Yeah, so over 300 people were spoken to as part of the inquiry. We scoured the local countryside, mine shafts, forests. No sign of Edward, sadly, whatsoever. And ever since then, we've been convinced that it was a murder.
And as you said, it's been 21 years tomorrow since Edward disappeared. How can the viewers that are watching this morning at home help?
So Sacriston's a very small, closely knit mining community. People are born there, live there, work there. We're convinced somebody in that village knows what's happened. Allegiance has changed. There's been a bit of time passed. We really hope somebody will come forward and shed some light on everything we've talked about, just so we can give the family the closure that they deserve.
Yeah, they need some closure, and sadly Edward's sister passed away without knowing what happened to him. So as you say, the family really needs some justice and some answers. Lee, thank you so much. As we said, 21 years since Edward's disappearance. Do you have any details that could help solve this case? If you do, please get in touch with us using the details below. For that, police need help finding out what happened to 24-year-old Alicia Boyerin, who was last seen in January 2022. Here to tell us more is DI Andrew Naismith. Andrew, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Let's start by you just telling us what you know so far about Alicia.
Well, we know Alicia was a 24-year-old female at the time of her disappearance. She lived in the Ashton-under-Lyne area of Greater Manchester. She lived with her great-grandfather, although she was very close to her grandmother. It was actually her grandmother who reported her missing at the time of her disappearance. We know she was classed as vulnerable because she was alcohol dependent, and at that time a missing person inquiry was launched.
Andrew, let's take a look at a map because it just helps to illustrate her last movements, doesn't it? In particular, there's 3 key dates on here, aren't there?
Yeah, so this map is areas that we know that Alicia has moved between. She was picked up from the Ashton-under-Lyne area on the 14th of January 2022, and we know that between the 14th and the 22nd of January, she moved between the Durham area in Bishop Auckland and the Glossop areas of Derbyshire.
And you think it's at this point, the 22nd of January, since then, that she could have come to some serious harm?
Yeah, so 22nd of January is the last sighting that we have of Alicia in and around the Glossop area of Derbyshire, albeit we do believe that she travelled to Chapel in the Frith at that time as well.
Let's have a look at some CCTV that we've got. We've got a first clip here. This is of Alicia in a Wallasby supermarket, is that right?
Yeah, so this is on the 17th of January 2022, where she's actually in a supermarket and she actually uses her bank card on this date. And this is the last official transaction we have of Alicia actually using anything to do with a bank account. We know that later this day she travels to Sunderland Bridge in Croxdale area of Durham. So we know that at this point she's alive and well.
Now, we can also see another clip from CCTV which actually shows Alicia at a petrol station.
Yeah, so this is the vehicle that we believe that Alicia was travelling in. She is a front seat passenger there. We have recovered this vehicle, but this vehicle is really important to our inquiry, and this actually is on the 17th of January as well.
Let's have a look at a closer image of that vehicle, because it's actually a gold Volkswagen Passat, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's gold in colour, very distinctive. It's got distinctive alloy wheels on it, and it's a 2003 registered Volkswagen Passat.
It's been over a year, hasn't it, since Alicia's disappearance. Clearly, the family are desperate for answers. How are they coping at the minute?
Not very well, as you can imagine. They are being supported by specialist family liaison officers, but they're desperate for answers. They want any answers for the whereabouts of Alicia. And one of the tragedies of this has been that Alicia's grandmother, who she was probably the most closest to in the family, has actually passed away in that time without answers. So we're appealing today really for anyone with any information to come forward and try and identify what has actually happened to Alicia.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it, Andrew? It could be that small piece of information that somebody sitting at home thinks, actually, that's not that significant. But you would appeal to our viewers today to get in touch. How else can they help?
Well, they can help us by contacting us if they've been in and around those areas between the 14th of January and the 22nd of January. In particular, the 22nd of January, we'd appeal to the rural community in and around Glossop and Chapel on the Frith areas, dog walkers, anyone who's seen anything significant around that time with a vehicle or spoken to Alicia potentially. Anyone who thinks that they've seen anything, vehicle or Alicia, it's really important that they come forward, because that little piece of information might just give us what we need to locate Alicia.
Yeah, and as you said with the vehicle, you did manage to recover it, but you're still looking for information around it, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. The missing person inquiry has now been escalated to a murder inquiry because we believe that Alicia's come to significant harm. So the vehicle sightings and the sightings of Alicia are really important to the investigation team.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you very much. We're going to keep those images and CCTV clips on our website so you can go and take another look at home. And remember, if you do have any information at all about this case, as Andrew said, please do get in touch with us. The contact details, as ever, are on your screens.
Now, we wanted to also bring you this urgent appeal from Avon and Somerset Police, who have issued an EFIT of an individual they want to trace after a report of an attempted kidnap of a schoolboy in Yeovil. On the morning of Monday, the 6th of March this year, an 8-year-old boy was walking to school with his mother and another child who was in a pushchair along Cedar Grove in North Yeovil. Just before 8:30 a.m, a car pulled up alongside them and a man got out of the car and tried to pull the boy away from his mother. She held on to the child and began shouting to raise the alarm, and the man jumped back into his car, heading in the direction of Preston Road. The man has been described as being aged about 30 to 40, about 5 foot 8 inches tall and of medium build with broad shoulders. He had olive brown skin, dark coloured hair in a quiff style and a beard. The car he was driving was a white estate vehicle that had tinted rear windows and was noticeably dirty. Police hope this EFIT will register as familiar to someone, or that people may recognise the description of the car. Police are also asking for any witnesses who were in the area at the time and saw the incident to come forward, and they would urge anyone who was parked up in this location and who might have dashcam footage to please get in touch as a matter of urgency. Police hope this EFIT will help jog people's memories, so please do get in touch with any information. The number is on the screen below. UK.
Yeah, and those details are on the screen throughout the programme, just next to the clock.
First this morning, a brutal rape that took place in the early hours of a Sunday summer's morning. It's left a lasting impact on the victim. I caught up with the Met team investigating the case earlier on, and here is what happened. Just to say, this film does contain some very difficult details.
I was sitting on some benches and two men approached me. One said hello to me, I said hello to him. He was about 5'7", 5'8", stocky, fat belly, jet black hair, and for some reason, I don't know why it stuck in my head so much, but he had a really thick but tidy jet black beard. I think he was wearing black jeans and a grey-coloured sweater with some kind of motif on it. He looked kind of Turkish or Asian. His accent wasn't English, I couldn't place it. We walked together for a bit, and then he tried to sexually assault me. I pushed him a little bit to let him know that I'm not happy with that. I was like, no. I was feeling scared, worried, wary of him, and he was drunk as well. Shortly after that, I saw someone coming out of a house and out of his garden gate. He didn't say anything, I'm not even sure he saw us. My attacker told me to be quiet, and I don't even think it was 30 seconds after, he grabbed me by my hair. He spun me around and moved me in front of him.
No!
And he just ignored me. He really caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting him to do that.
Come here. No!
When I started to struggle with him, he kind of grabbed me closer. I looked to see where I could go to get away from him. I was between the van and a wall, and there was nowhere for me to go because he was in front of me. He was very forceful. I froze. I just thought, I'm not getting away. I couldn't speak, I couldn't scream, I couldn't do anything. I was frozen. It was horrible. And then he raped me. And then at that point, his friend jumped from around the corner. He had been watching. His friend just started laughing. He thought it was hilarious. And then my attacker said to me, "Stay there, I don't want anyone to see me with you." And he took a cigarette and threw one at me. He laughed and walked off. I walked back to the benches and cried. I was like, what just happened? I was angry as well. I felt humiliated. Humiliated.
Detective Sergeant Pembe Raif is leading the investigation.
It was a very violent and traumatic attack for the woman. We had numerous officers conducting door-to-door inquiries and local directed inquiries, which consisted of speaking to business owners and checking CCTV, which has enabled us to get some clear images of both males. However, at this point, we've been unable to trace both suspects. We're on West Green Road at the junction of Halton Road, and this is the bench where our victim was sat, and the two male suspects approached her from that direction. From looking at the CCTV, we know that there was also a bus that drove past at the time, numerous cars, pedestrians, and in particular a cyclist who cycled past whilst the attack was taking place. I can only imagine how traumatic that was for her and how scared she must have been. She was trapped between the van and the wall, and she was in a position where she couldn't escape from her attacker. We are desperately searching for this man because I don't want him to put anyone else in this position ever again.
Well, I'm joined by DS Pembe Raif, who is one of the investigating officers on the case. Thank you for coming in. It's a horrific attack on a lone female. First of all, how is she doing now?
Understandably, she's traumatised by what happened to her, but she's been supported by specially trained officers at the Met Police, and we're just trying to see her through and obviously catch who's done this to her.
Well, clearly we need to identify who is responsible, so just tell us the key details of what did happen that night.
OK, so our victim was on West Green Road in Tottenham. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning on the 25th of June 2022. She was sat on some benches when two males approached her, and one male, who is our main suspect, walked off with our victim onto Halton Road.
And that's when the assault took place by this individual. Now, it's worth saying this is Seven Sisters. It's a busy area of the capital, isn't it? Even at this time of night, lots of people would have been around.
Completely. I mean, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You'd expect it to be quiet. However, looking back at the CCTV, there are a number of buses that pass at the time, pedestrians and even cyclists.
You've got some CCTV now that you can show us of the time of the attack. This is 2 males we can see circled here. Just describe what's happening here.
So these are the 2 males walking off together. The man in the grey top is our suspect, who we are really keen to identify, but we are still keen to speak to his friend to see if he's got any vital information for us.
Yes, you'd still like to identify both, but you want to make it clear that the person in the grey is your suspect. What can you tell us about him?
So our victim described him as being around 30 to 35 years of age, around 5'7" in height, Turkish appearance with dark hair, a thick-set dark black beard, and he was wearing a grey hoodie, dark bottoms, black trainers with a white sole, and she also described him as having quite a chubby belly.
And we can see that from that image there. And we're just going to take a look at the person that was with him, because, as you say, you'd still like to speak to him because he may be a witness to what did occur.
Completely. He was described as also being of Turkish appearance, dark hair, black beard. The jacket he was wearing is described as black leather look, and he was wearing jeans with black shoes.
How can our viewers help you today?
Any information is crucial to us at this time. It was a violent attack. Obviously, the victim, her life has been completely ruined by what's happened, and we just want this man to be caught so he can't do it to anyone else.
Yeah, it's vital we identify who did this. Pemby, thank you for joining us. Have a good look. If you do recognise either of these men, then get in touch. The number to call is 08000 468 999.
First, on Boxing Day 2021, Raju Muadia was fatally stabbed after attending a party in Leicester. The police need help finding out who was responsible.
Raju was 41. He was part of a big family. He was one of 6 siblings. He came from India to start a new life in Leicester with his family and was close with his family. He enjoyed spending time with his 8-year-old son. Raju was really into his fitness. He used to play football with his son, and he was also into boxing. His son is inspired now to follow boxing like his dad.
On Boxing Day in 2021, Raju Muadia met some friends at a party on Hamilton Street in Leicester.
It is a very low-key gathering of friends in the street. They are stood out having drinks, chatting, and just generally having a nice evening. And then at 11:20, he attends the local shop where he purchases some whiskey to take back to the gathering. Raju appears to become more intoxicated as the evening goes on. The atmosphere within the group appears to change slightly. And his friends try and help him. They book a taxi for him.
You know what I'm saying?
And he is heard to say, "I'm going home now."
But Raju never got into the taxi. Just 7 minutes later, as his taxi drove by, he was seen on CCTV staggering across the road. He'd been stabbed 5 times.
Ambulance service, is the patient breathing?
No.
No, tell me exactly what's happened.
Basically, we just passed from the street. We're working out, and we find someone in the floor. He's not breathing.
Raju was taken to hospital, where he died from his injuries.
What started as a gathering in a street in Leicester over the Christmas period in 2021 has ended with a devastating outcome for a family who've lost a much-loved member.
Following the police's initial investigation, 5 men were charged with Raju's murder. But they were found not guilty.
The camera doesn't cover where the incident occurred. It is a route where pedestrians have access to and from that street. There is potential that another party could have been involved that we are yet to uncover. So the incident where he receives his fatal stab wounds has occurred in this small area here. This area is heavily residential. We're at Christmas time, people will have been visiting family, friends, and there are lots of windows and doors that open up onto this street. We're appealing for witnesses to come forward because Raju's family deserve answers to what has occurred in the street that night. They've lost a loved one, a son, brother, and father.
The family are devastated by the death of Raju and how he died, the fact that nobody has been brought to justice. And that's very difficult for them, and it's very difficult for his son to accept that as well. And he's struggling to come to terms with the loss of his father and the reasons why.
Well, I'm joined now by DCI Nicole Main from Leicestershire Police. Nicole, thanks so much for coming in today. This is an incredibly sad case, isn't it? Firstly, what do we know about Raju?
So Raju is a 41-year-old male and he's known locally in the area as Kara Maru. He's a much-loved family member. He comes from a large family and he is the father of a young son. It's over a year since this incident occurred on Boxing Day in 2021 and understandably the family is struggling to come to terms with his loss.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really tragic. So what have you managed to piece together from the night that this all happened?
So we know that Raju attends Hamilton Street in Leicester on Boxing Day and he attends there to a gathering with his friends. We know that shortly after midnight he receives some stab wounds, fatal stab wounds, and he makes his way out onto Evington Road where he collapses and he passes by, call an ambulance, he's taken to hospital where he sadly dies.
There were various CCTV and doorbell cameras which has helped you build up a timeline of events, hasn't it? But crucially, where the attack itself took place, that wasn't caught on CCTV, was it?
No, the incident itself wasn't captured on CCTV, but we know Raju's movements before and after the incident itself. So we know what time he attends Hamilton Street, we know he's there at the gathering, and at 11:20 we know he goes to the local convenience store where he purchases some more alcohol and he returns to the party on Hamilton Street itself. Then we pick him up on a long view camera following the stabbing and he makes his way onto Evington Road and the collapse there is picked up on that camera.
This has been impossible for the family to deal with, hasn't it? The son just can't understand why this has happened, how it happened. It's just a real terrible thing for them to have to go through. In fact, they have given us an impact statement, haven't they, where they've said, Raju was a much-loved son, brother and uncle, but most of all, a loving father to his young son. The day his son was born was the happiest and proudest moment of Raju's life. Raju was always there for his family and for his friends. How many more knife attacks can people tolerate and hear the news of another young person losing a life? This has to stop, and it starts with the people who know what happened to Raju. Really powerful words there from the family, Nicole. Now, there were some witnesses that you're really keen to speak to. Tell us about these people.
Yes, so Hamilton Street is a dead-end street for vehicles, and shortly after midnight on the 27th of December 2021, we see a light-coloured vehicle, which we believe to be a light-coloured BMW 3 Series, drive up and down Hamilton Street, and the driver or passengers in that vehicle could have seen something that's crucial to our inquiries, and we urge them to make themselves known to us and ring in. Shortly after midnight, we have a witness who walks on the opposite side of the road at 9 minutes past. They may have passed the incident and can help us identify those involved. And then we see 3 males in the street at 19 minutes past, looking towards where the incidents occurred, and they also could have been in the street at the time, so we would urge them to make themselves known and come forward to us. Unfortunately, we can't share the images of those people at this time to assist with that.
It's important to stress, isn't it, that these are witnesses, they're not suspects?
Yes, absolutely. They are witnesses. They're seen in the street after the incident itself has occurred. And again, we appeal to them to come forwards and help us with inquiries. It's a heavy residential area, and we urge anybody who was there visiting relatives that night on the street, as it's Christmas time, it's Boxing Day, to come forward and assist us if they saw or heard anything.
Yeah, and we do have to mention, don't we, Nicole, that there were 5 people who were previously charged in relation to the incident. We heard about that in the film there. They were found not guilty after the case was dismissed in court. Your focus very much remains on finding the people or person responsible for Raju's murder.
Yes, it absolutely does. Myself and my team are committed to finding out those who are responsible for this crime that occurred in Leicester, to provide answers for the family and prevent this happening again.
And there is a Crime Stoppers reward in connection to this case, isn't there?
Yes, there is. There is a reward of £20,000 from Crime Stoppers for, and you can ring in anonymously for information that leads to an arrest and prosecution in this case. It's vitally important that we capture all the witnesses in the street at that time. Like I've said, it was Christmas time, it was Boxing Day, people were out and about on that street. We've seen that from the CCTV. And it's crucial they come forward to assist us getting answers for a family and a young boy who's lost his dad. And as he grows up, he will understand what's happened to his father, and that's incredibly difficult to explain to somebody so young.
Yeah, that's so true. It really is tragic, and hopefully we'll be able to help get the answers that you need. Nicole, thank you so much. So, were you on Hamilton Street around midnight on that Sunday night, or were you one of the individuals who drove or walked past shortly after the incident? If so, then please get in touch. First today, Cory Dob was tragically stabbed and died from his injuries back in June 2021. Do you have any information that could help the investigation?
Holderness Strain, a quiet residential area on the east side of Hull in Humberside, and a place that 23-year-old Cory Dob called home.
Cory was a very, very loving individual. He was kind, he was gentle. He'd always put himself out for other people. He'd always be prepared to help everyone else out and always put people first.
On the 13th of June 2021, Cory had agreed to meet an acquaintance at Harleston Close, near where he lived. Cory's bike was broken, so a friend gave him a lift.
They travelled together in a Ford Focus, getting to the Close just before 7 o'clock in the evening. What we know then is the vehicle reversed back into Harleston Close. The individual that Cory arranged to meet got into the vehicle behind the driver. They were in the back of the vehicle for a couple of minutes, and then there's a heated argument within the back of that car. During that argument, the individual tries to grab a bag that Cory had in his possession. The driver panics. He accelerated, and the individual falls out of the back of the car with this bag and lands on the pavement outside.
Cory got out of the car to follow the man.
Then they have a confrontation. There's threats that are made, and it's at that point that the man brandishes a knife and makes threats towards Cory. This argument and these threats keep going further down the Close onto the drain bank. And it's at that point that we know that Cory was stabbed.
Cory had been stabbed 5 times.
An air ambulance was called along with the response officers. But unfortunately, he's pronounced deceased at the scene.
Detectives found CCTV showing this man walking away from the area just moments after Cory was stabbed.
So what we ended up doing was releasing a series of images to members of the public in hope that someone would recognise the individual.
Police believe the man captured on CCTV may be Moisey Juku. An appeal for his whereabouts went out on Crimewatch.
He uses a number of different names, including Kobe and the surname Kalinde. He has links to West and South Yorkshire, as well as Greater Manchester.
We followed every line of inquiry that we have, every piece of intelligence that come in, and it's literally as if he's disappeared off the face of the earth.
18 months on from Cory's murder, the case remains unsolved.
The impact on Cory's family has been absolutely devastating. He was the real rock and the linchpin. Despite our very best efforts, it's frustrating that the case has gone on as long as it has. We're appealing for any information that might assist our investigation, but in particular, we're looking for information that will identify the location of Moisey Juku.
Well, I'm joined by DS Kevin Goodman from the Major Crime Team at Humberside Police. Kevin, thanks so much for being with us this morning. This is such a sad case, isn't it? Cory was such a loved man. Just remind us of the key details of that day, exactly what happened.
Sure, it's absolutely tragic. It was in contrast to today, it was a hot, long summer's day. It was around about 7 o'clock in the evening on Sunday, the 13th of June, 2021. Cory had organised for a lift to be taken to Harpenden Close. You can see on your screens. The individual he's meeting got into the rear of the car, and an argument ensued quite quickly after, which spilled out onto Harpenden Close and then onto the Holderness Drain there, where sadly Cory was stabbed 5 times, and despite the best efforts of passers-by, the police, paramedics and indeed an attending air ambulance, Cory sadly died a short time after.
Yeah, it's really, really tragic. Now, Kevin, you'd like to locate the person you believe has been captured on the CCTV. This is a freeze frame of the person. Just talk us through who this man is.
This is Moisey Juku. He's 23 years old, originally from the Congo. He's literally vanished 48 hours after the incident, and we are very keen to know his whereabouts. Obviously, we've made an appeal previously on Crimewatch, and we followed every lead, and he still remains outstanding. It's getting to the point now that there are no traces of him, that you're actually concerned about his welfare and whereabouts. Indeed. Cory, Moisey rather, was from the Congo originally. He moved to Hull when he was 6 years old. There's absolutely no trace whatsoever. There's no contact with his family, no contact with his friends. There's been no activity on digital media whatsoever, no financial transactions, and we now have grave concerns of his whereabouts. And indeed, Humberside Police and officers within my team are looking at and treating him as a high-risk missing person. What would you say to anybody watching this morning that may have that key piece of information that could help with this case? Well, we're asking your viewers that if they've had any information or location of Moisey in the last 2 years to contact police. It's 2 years coming up in June, and the family are eager to seek some justice for Cory's killer. So any information, I mean, we're aware that he may have simply morphed into a new community, may have altered his appearance or indeed his identity and his name. So anyone with any information, please contact police, and we appeal to Moisey himself that if he's watching, do the right thing for the family. Please contact police. Yeah, and as you said, it's coming up to the 2-year anniversary of Cory's tragic death. He had an older brother, they were really close, obviously his parents, the people in the community, we said just how loved he was. How are the family coping? It's unimaginable, Michelle, really. Completely devastated by the loss. He's 23 years old. He's a much-loved young man. There's a massive void in their lives. His brother and his cousin have raised money locally for bleed kits within Hull, so that something good could come out of something so tragic. And we hope that by locating Cory's killer may form some closure to what is still a living nightmare for the family. Yeah, Kevin, thank you so much, and we'll be sure to catch up with you again a little later on in the programme. So if you do have any information on this case or the whereabouts of Moisey Juku, then please do get in touch. The number to call is 08000 468 999.
First this morning, it's the murder of a young father-to-be, Takeo Nembard, who was stabbed and killed at London's Notting Hill Carnival. Earlier, I spoke to Takeo's parents, Sandra and Vincent, and asked them what Takeo was like as a person.
Charismatic, funny, headstrong, thoughtful. What else can you think of?
Caring.
Yeah, he was caring.
And really into his education, I hear, as well.
Yep. Yeah, he was bright. He was bright from a very early age. Very early age. Like, when he was like 18 months, he could count to 10 in twos. We realised in nursery. So, yeah, very bright from a very early age. Didn't need to study. He could just pick things up quite easily throughout school. So he came off with good education.
And he was a musician and a rapper as well, wasn't he? And as parents, you really supported his passion for music.
Indeed, yeah. We tried to support him with anything he wanted to do, to be fair. We couldn't steer him to do with what he didn't want to do. He'd always have his own ideas as to what he wanted to do.
And he wanted to release his own music, is that right?
Well, he did, yeah. But before that, he used to be a footballer before. He, from the age of 6, he was in Bristol Rovers Academy till under 16. Then he moved to Tottenham, and then he had a bad injury at Tottenham, so that kind of stopped his career. So that was his first passion, football. And then when he couldn't play it anymore, then he'd move over to music while he was doing an apprenticeship in plumbing with Bristol City Council as well. So yeah, so then the music take over.
Clearly an extremely talented boy, and as we said, he wanted to release his music, and you're actually planning to release the music that he created in his memory.
Yes, well, I did. I released an EP last week. Yeah, so no, yeah, so that's what he wanted to do. Before then, we was just releasing singles, but then this year we were planning to releasing like EP or album. So I said, I have to just try and carry on some of his legacy.
Of course,
yeah.
In his honour.
Yeah.
I have to ask you both, how are you doing? How are you coping? Because it's such a tragic thing that's happened.
Day by day, really. Every day is a battle. Every day is a battle. And I'm always just one blink away from crying. Some days I manage to be stronger, and some days I can't hold it together. So it's just every day we just deal with it as best we can, to be fair.
Yeah.
And we have his sisters that we have to keep pushing on for as well. So I think if they weren't about, it would be a very different story. But I have to be strong for them.
Sandra, for people that are watching this morning who may hold some information about what happened, what would you say to them?
Please end our pain. It's so painful having to do interviews and things like that and appeals to get justice. We just please try and end our pain. I know people are scared of the involvement and things like that, but if they could just, I know it's not going to bring him back, but it would at least end our pain somewhat. Because it is really hard trying to hold it together all the time. So yeah, I would just say, please be brave, and the police will protect you as much as you can. Yeah, that's what to say.
Sandra, Vincent, thank you so much for coming in today. I know it hasn't been easy, and I really hope that we can find some answers.
Thank you.
And I'm now with Detective Inspector Laura Semple from the Met Police, who's leading this murder investigation. Hello, Laura. Clearly a very emotional appeal for a very much loved young man. What can you tell us about this incident?
So Takeo Nembard travelled from Bristol to Notting Hill Carnival. Notting Hill Carnival is an extremely busy event. Hundreds of thousands of people travel to Notting Hill. It's loud. Obviously, the crowds are huge. So he travelled with some family and friends to the carnival. And then on Monday, the 29th of August, at around 8 p.m, he'd walked from along Chesterton Road down Ladbroke Grove.
This is the area we can see on the map here now.
Yeah, that's correct. Towards sort of Westway, which was where, sadly, he was fatally stabbed. So he received one stab wound to sort of the right groin area, which sadly hit his femoral artery, and he shortly collapsed and later died.
Yeah, it's an awful, awful incident. I know there was lots of emergency services there who responded, who tried to treat him at the scene, but it was shortly after that he lost his life.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a heavily policed event. The police saw him collapse, and that was where they treated him, and later was treated by ambulance service as well, but sadly he couldn't be saved.
It is, as you say, heavily policed. There's lots of CCTV around the area. Has that assisted your investigation so far?
So it enabled us to sort of track Takeo's movements during the evening, and what it also enabled us to do was see a group running away from the scene. So we've arrested 5 people and they've all been released under investigation. But what we are still trying to do is identify one further individual. So we'd really like the public's help today with tracing that individual. He's quite distinctive.
So we can see an image here, and we're going to show another image. This is the same person, and as you say, quite distinctive because of what he's wearing. The headgear there, we just saw the hat that he was wearing on that individual there. We can see this image here. This is quite distinctive, isn't it?
Yes, we believe that it says Yankees. He's a black male with a sort of baseball cap on, so any help that anyone can give us to identify him would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, because this person may hold some vital information that could help the investigation. At this stage, have you had any witnesses come forward? Because as you've mentioned, this is very busy. There are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in the area. Has anyone come forward and said they've seen what happened?
So we haven't as yet, and as I said, it would be really, really useful. Anyone that's seen anything, people travel from all around the country, so anyone that's seen anything. Takeo is quite distinctive. He's very tall. He's 6'8". So yeah, any help that we can get, and if people are scared, then
as you say, very, very tall. He may have stood out at the time. People may have noticed him, and we need to know what happened to him then.
Yeah, and if people are scared, please just come forward and we can put safety measures in place to try and protect you.
It all starts with a conversation, doesn't it? You just need people to pick up the phone, speak to you and your team. You will do whatever you can to keep them as safe as possible. You just need that information.
Yes,
Laura.
please. Thank you.
Thank you. So, were you at Notting Hill Carnival on that Monday evening? It was around 8 p.m, remember? It was the 29th of August of last year. And did you see anything? Remember, Takeo was, as we've just said, very, very tall. Maybe he stood out to you. Or do you recognise this individual? If you have any information at all, the number to call is 08000 468 999. Before that, in the run-up to Christmas 2002, father of 3, Sha James, was out celebrating when he was deliberately run over and tragically killed. His murderer has never been caught.
Oh, you were a cute baby. You and your dad got the same expression.
Yeah.
He was, loved his football, loved spending time with his kids. Yeah, he was a good guy. I think about him a lot.
Sha James had 3 children from 2 different relationships.
We got married when our son Jesse was a baby, really. We had very happy times. Sean was a great dad, loved him, and yeah, it was good.
On Sunday the 15th of December 2002, in Cinderford, in the Forest of Dean, Sean was enjoying a Christmas drink at his local, the Upper Bilson Inn.
It was quite normal for Sean to have a drink on the weekends. You know, fair play to him, he worked so hard during the week. Saturday afternoons he'd do cobbles, do people's driveways. So Saturday nights, Sunday afternoons, we like to go out for a few beers.
He was expected home at around 7, but Sean never arrived. At just after 7 p.m, his body was found lying in a small lane, 3/4 of a mile from the pub.
He's found in the middle of the lane. He's got injuries consistent with being struck by a motor vehicle and being dragged by a motor vehicle, and it was treated by the investigators at that time as a fatal road accident.
Yeah, so knock on the door, we think it's Sean, you know, we're pretty sure that it's Sean that we've got. He's been killed. And I was like, no, can't be Sean. Look, Lisa, has he got this tattoo on his arm? Has he got this? And I knew he did, but I was in denial. I was like, no, oh, that's definitely not him, you know?
I can remember my mum waking me up in the morning, just before Christmas, distraught, you know, just being told that your dad's just been killed. Well, your dad had died. Yeah, it wasn't very nice at all.
Police were never able to identify the driver or the vehicle involved in the suspected hit and run, and the case went no further. But then, in 2014, 12 years after Sean's death, a cold case investigation was launched.
The 2014 cold case came about as new information that was received and clearly an advancement in forensic analysis.
Mark, all the best. See you later, boys.
Police re-examined Sean's movements that night.
He left, according to witnesses, about around 6:45 p.m. that evening. He's then seen by a couple of car drivers weaving in and out of the road on Valley Road. He was then seen talking to the occupants of a white van at around 6:55 p.m. The last confirmed sighting of Sean alive. His body is then found by the members of the public at 7:06.
One of Sean's shoes and his tobacco pouch were found on the road where he'd been seen talking to the van driver. A forensic reconstruction suggested that he could not have lost these items and then walked 3/4 of a mile in just 10 minutes to the spot where his body was found. Police deduced the only way he could have got between the two locations was if he had been bundled into the van and driven to the lane off Steam Mills Road, pushed out of the van onto the road and then deliberately run over.
And what was really horrific was there's a trail of blood that leads back around 65 metres from where Sean's body lay, back up towards Steam Mills Road, clearly where he'd been dragged along the road. And then as it hits the hairpin, it would have then been released from the undercarriage of that vehicle. So it's totally unconceivable that the driver did not know that they had a body and were dragging a body after clearly they'd originally run him over.
12 years after Sean's death, police launched a fresh murder investigation.
You've had one particularly interesting call.
Yes, we've had a number of calls, but one in particular that we're really interested in, and we'd like the caller to call us back. The caller mentions the van. And
following the Crimewatch appeal, 5 people were arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit Sean's murder, but they were later released without charge. Police believe someone who was in Cinderford at the time of Sean's murder may still have vital information that could help identify his killer.
Sean's family, they have no justice, they have no closure. There are people there that know what happened to Sean. They will know why it happened and what happened afterwards.
The problem is, like, we can't trust anyone, can we?
No.
You just can't.
You've always got at the back of your head, was it them, was it, you know?
And I literally don't talk to, like, I'm rarely, like, I keep myself to myself, so I don't want to speak to people, because you don't know.
Me and my sisters, we've all missed out on a dad. He's missed out on grandchildren. He's missed out on his own kids. He's missed out on a lot. We definitely deserve someone to come forward.
And I'm now with DI Paula Hannaford from Gloucestershire Constabulary. It's been over 20 years, Paula, since Sean was killed. Can you just remind us of those details of the investigation?
Yes, it has been 20 years. It was December the 15th, 2002. Sean was drinking in his local pub. He was seen around between 6:30 and 6:45, leaving the pub in the direction of his home address. Then between 6:45 and 6:55, he was seen talking to the occupants of an unknown white van. That was the last known sighting of Sean alive.
OK, now, at the time, the police discovered his body shortly a short time later, and it was thought it was a tragic hit and run. But since a huge review of the whole investigation, that's no longer the case.
That's correct. Yes, there was a huge review in 2014. Where his body was found was around 10, 11 minutes from the sighting of the white van. So because he was so intoxicated, it was totally inconceivable that he would have walked that distance. The only way he could have got there, which is around 3/4 of a mile, would have been in a mode of transport.
And we can see that there. We can see where the pub is, and it is, as you say, it's quite some distance to where the body was found. And in a sort of 10-minute time frame, it's unlikely that anyone could do that on foot, especially not in his condition after drinking that night. And it is believed he was taken there.
That's correct, yes. So when he was seen talking to the occupants of that white van, what was found, obviously, as a result of the initial police investigation, was his tobacco pouch and one shoe. That obviously was 3/4 of a mile from where his body was sadly found.
Yeah, that is some distance, isn't it? OK, we need some answers. So what can the public do today to help?
They play an important part. The Forest of Dean is a close community. Cinderford is a really close community. They know each other. They've known about this for 20 years. We got an awful lot of information back in 2014, but I really want to appeal to the people who may have known what's happened to come forward to give Sean's family some justice, please.
Well, we've heard from the family and how much this means to them. I know that you've got specialist officers that are working with the family.
Yes.
It means so much to them to find out what happened to Sean, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sean was a father. He would have been a grandfather now. They haven't been able to live their lives knowing that Sean was in their lives. And I really appeal to the public and the local community of Cinderford to please come forward.
And let's hope so, Paula. Thank you. So, do you have any information that could help? Maybe you've been too worried to come forward so far. Well, if you know or remember anything that could help Sean's family find some peace, then please do get in touch. First, it's the murder of 15-year-old Tristan Holmes. His family are heartbroken. This is what happened to him. And just to say, you might find this a difficult watch.
Tristan was a very outgoing boy. He loved going out with his friends. He was very lively. He loved to laugh and play about. Tristan grew up in Allington, where he lived with his mum and his stepdad and his 3 brothers. He used to come and stay with me every fortnight, and in the holidays we would often watch videos and play the PlayStation. It was really nice being his dad.
On the afternoon of Sunday the 13th of December 2015, 15-year-old Tristan Holmes and 2 acquaintances were out in the Allington area of Derby.
Allington was known to have gangs around it quite a lot. I was worried about certain characters that he was hanging around with.
The group visited the Mitre pub.
What we see is the 3 males together. Don't seem to be any issues. We know that Tristan and the second male are in the lobby area of the pub for a short time.
After a few minutes, one of the group leaves.
We don't know where he goes to, but we know that he comes back a short time later. And Tristan then appeared to be in an altercation where they both square up to each other. He lunges towards Tristan. Then he runs away, leaves the area. And Tristan and the second male go into the pub, and a phone call's made by the landlady of the pub to paramedics.
Tristan had been stabbed.
We was told initially by the consultant that if we believed in a God, then we're best pray now because they don't think they can save him.
Tristan survived the attack, but was left in a critical condition.
Me and his mum and his family was by his bed. And when he woke up, He just turned around to me and said, "Oh, Dad, I've been stabbed."
Even though the whole attack was captured on the pub's CCTV, police couldn't identify the attacker.
You can see from the CCTV it's not clear who that male is. We looked to do house-to-house inquiries from people that may have seen things in the area. There was obviously a lot of witnesses that we spoke to at the time who gave us descriptions.
Police made an arrest, but crucially, Tristan refused to talk to police about his attacker.
The victim was reluctant to prosecute, even though he'd had a horrific injury.
Meanwhile, Tristan's liver was irreparably damaged, and within days, he had a transplant.
After the attack, he became withdrawn in himself. That spark he used to have was gone. I used to have flashbacks of the incident. He would talk in his sleep sometimes.
Tristan's first transplant lasted for 5 years. Over the next 18 months, he had 2 more.
He was told, "There's nothing else I can do." I remember him saying to me that why did it have to happen to him? And the person get away with it. But we knew that he was going to go.
In June last year, Tristan died. Police are now treating his death as murder.
Tristan was effectively murdered on that day. He just survived a long time, which is unusual in a murder investigation. So everything is being re-looked at. All of the appeals for witnesses, people will be spoken to again. Different opportunities around CCTV. We do know that there are people out in the community who can identify the third person in this incident so that we can get justice for Tristan and his family.
I don't think I will ever recover over losing Tristan. Anyone who knows anything about that day, please come forward and give my son the justice he deserves.
We're now joined by DCI Greg McGill from Derbyshire Police. Greg, it's just so sad. It's now 7 years on from when Tristan was attacked. It's now, of course, a murder investigation. His family are being supported by you and other specialist officers, but how are they doing?
Yeah, it's been a really tough time. The original incident was obviously difficult to deal with, but knowing or not knowing whether or not he's going to survive, and ultimately knowing in the end that he didn't survive and that he wasn't going to survive, it's been really difficult for them.
So tough for them. So you've obviously got a number of challenges now that you're dealing with this as a murder investigation, one of which is you don't even have the murder weapon. This is tough for you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. We would hope to have the murder weapon, and obviously we'd ask anybody that knows what happened to that weapon on the day. If anybody has any information, it may be hidden, for example, just come forward and speak to me and my officers and we'll do the rest.
Just get that information across. Well, let's recap on where and when this took place. We can see a map here. Just talk us through the area, Greg.
Yeah, so this is the Allington area of Derby. You'll see the Mitre pub, which doesn't exist anymore, but at the time, that's where the incident took place. And the pink line shows the route we believe that the suspect ran away from. So along Harvey Road, down Cockayne Street South and onto Upper Moor Road in the direction of Merrill Academy that people know locally.
OK, now let's just see the CCTV again, Greg. We'll see this first clip. Just talk us through what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so Tristan comes on the right-hand side of the shot, as you see it, and it's quite innocuous. There's nothing really going on. They go into the lobby area of the pub, and on the left-hand side is the ultimate offender in the offence that we see in the next clip. OK,
so they've gone into the pub. A short time later, we're going to see this next clip now, and we actually see this here, Greg.
Yeah, so we think that this is our offender. So where did he go? Does anybody have any information about where he went to? He's only gone for a short time. Did he collect a weapon? Is that the reason he left? We just need to know.
So it's one of the three that turned up, and now he's left. And then we're going to see this third clip now, and this is the altercation that occurs outside this same pub. Talk us through it.
So this is Tristan that's just come out of the pub, same male again that's come back, and they have an altercation, and you can see now that Tristan does go back and he gets lunged at by this male, and that ultimately is where the stabbing was.
OK, from this point here. Now, I mean, what we can see there from that image is it's a busy area, and at the moment you just don't have those crucial witnesses.
No, this is Derby, the middle of the day. There will be people that have seen things that we've not spoken to that may have thought it was innocuous at the time. This is a murder investigation. A young 15-year-old boy lost his life that day. He just survived for a long time. So if anybody did see anything, please come forward.
So they may not have realised what they saw was going to lead to this young man losing his life those years later. The pathologist has confirmed that this young man would still be alive if it wasn't for the stabbing from that day, and that's crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's crucial in a murder investigation to show that causal link. There's a stabbing that took place that day. He died in June last year. If he hadn't have had that incident, if he hadn't have had the liver transplant, he wouldn't have died.
And Greg, if anyone's watching this at the moment and they do know something about what happened, but they're a little bit reluctant to come forward, perhaps they're scared, you just want to confirm this all starts with a conversation. You just want that information. You and your team can talk them through other things that may be able to be offered to help them, but you just need that information.
Yeah, people come forward. It all starts with a conversation with me and my team, but we will support people as best that we can. But please do come forward and start the conversation with us.
Okay, Greg, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. Have you heard anything about this murder that could help? Did you witness anything? If you've got any information to share, our number is 08000 468 999. First, though, in 1999, car dealer Patrick Logan was just weeks away from getting married when masked men broke into his house armed with a gun. Detectives are still seeking information on who committed the crime.
Patrick was 40 years old at the time of his death. He'd been born in Northern Ireland, but he and his family moved to the Manchester area when he was a teenager. He was a car dealer. He was very well known in the local area. He was a regular at many pubs. He was a very popular figure. He lived with his partner, who he was engaged to marry, and her teenage son.
On the 27th of July 1999, Patrick Logan and his fiancée Susan attended a party with some friends. At around 11:30 p.m, they left the party and returned home to their house at Cuddington Avenue.
They drove home in their camper van. They parked the van directly outside their house and they went inside. It was a normal evening. There was certainly nothing that would indicate what was about to happen.
While the couple slept, in the early hours of the morning, two men approached their home. Finding their way through a back window, they entered the house.
At approximately 3:45 in the morning, Patrick was awoken by a noise. He went out onto the landing and looked down the stairs, came back into the bedroom and said something to Susan about being broken into, and he picked up the phone and he dialed 999.
Emergency, which service? It's police, please. Police, thank you. Go ahead, caller, what's the problem?
Yeah, it's, I've just been woke up. There's been people down the stairs that just run out. I don't know what's going on.
While Patrick spoke to the police, a man walked up the stairs and entered the bedroom.
Out of your property.
The intruder produced a pistol and shot at Patrick 5 times, hitting him twice in the chest. As Patrick lay dying, the gunman and his accomplice fled.
We believe that this was a premeditated attack. This was not a burglary, nothing was stolen. The fact is that the offenders went to the address with a firearm, and we believe that they fully intended to kill Patrick Logan that night.
Patrick had suffered catastrophic injuries. He was transported to Withington Hospital, where he died shortly after arrival.
It's hard to describe the impact that the shooting has had on his partner. To have a loved one gunned down in front of you was devastating for her and also for her son. No child should ever have to witness something like that. The Greater Manchester Police never close a murder investigation. We know that there are people out there who know who committed this murder. We know that allegiances change over time, and we hope that somebody feels able to tell us now who committed this murder so that we can bring them to justice and give peace to Patrick's family.
And I'm now joined by the head of Greater Manchester Police's Cold Case Unit, Martin Bottomley. Welcome back, Martin. What can you tell us about this murder?
Yes, it was late July 1999. Patrick had been out to a party with his fiancée. They were both in a good mood, and when they came home, they went to bed about midnight. Then by about 3:45 in the morning, someone broke into the house. And as you've seen in the film, you've seen what happened next. He was executed in the most brutal way.
It really was horrendous. Let's take a look, Martin, at where this happened, and we can see that on the map.
Yes, this is Withington, which is just south of Manchester city centre. It's Cuddington Avenue, and you can see the corner house there. That's where Patrick lived. That's where he was shot. And after the shooting, the men responsible ran towards an alleyway where they then escaped in a silver Vauxhall Vectra.
Have you any idea why he was targeted in this way?
Well, Patrick was well known locally. He was a very sociable man, very gregarious. But he was also involved in some business dealings, which I believe went sour. And I think there's a distinct link to Belfast in Northern Ireland. I think associates there fell out with him and perhaps decided to exact some revenge for some reason. We don't really know why. But I think the hit was called on Patrick from Belfast. And of course, he was then executed, as we've seen.
Yeah. At this time, what do you know about the gunman or indeed his accomplices?
Well, we know there were two men involved. Obviously, one broke into the house and killed him. One drove the getaway car. But crucially, a witness heard the name Kieran being shouted out as the men were running away. So it's a very distinct possibility that one of the men was called Kieran.
OK. And what about the vehicle? Because you've got information about a type of car they were believed to have left in.
Yes, we know they escaped in a silver Vauxhall Vectra car. It was a 5-door saloon, quite distinctive at the time because it had a spoiler on the back and an extra brake light, which was either on the spoiler itself or high up on the windscreen. And you can see there it's probably had alloy wheels as well, but it was definitely a silver Vauxhall Vectra. OK, and there was some other evidence that was left behind by the suspects as well that could be crucial to the investigation. Absolutely, yes. We've recovered some fingerprints from the scene, but we've not been able to identify those yet. But we've also recovered some footwear impressions. Now, these footwear impressions were left on the kitchen work surface and the kitchen floor, and we're able to say that they were a Nike Air more up-tempo model. Obviously outdated shoes now, but we know that the wearer of those training shoes would have been a size 8 or a size 9 wearing those Nike Air trainers. We heard in the film that Patrick was about to get married. This happened many, many years ago. His family have just not had any answers as to what's happened. How are they coping? Well, they still live locally, but they do want answers, obviously. You know, bringing justice for Patrick and his family will bring some kind of reconciliation in their minds, and that's what we're hoping for today. We need someone to tell us who those killers are. And if someone is at home and they've got information that they're yet to share with you, there is a substantial reward on offer for information, isn't there, Martin? Yes, indeed there is. Greater Manchester Police are offering a reward of £50,000 to anyone who gives us information which leads to the arrest and conviction of Patrick's killers. Martin, thank you. So, do you know anyone who was driving a silver Vauxhall Vectra with a distinctive spoiler similar to this one? A man was shot in front of his family and they've been waiting nearly 24 years to find out
why. If you have any information, our phone lines are open until midday. The number to call is 08000 468 999. First this morning, can you help find the men behind an attack that has changed its victim's life forever? Just to warn you that this appeal does have some upsetting details.
BBC Radio Berkshire, the waitresses.
Decorations all up, ready for Christmas, a usual day.
On Friday the 17th of December 2021, Tina Wood was at home in Foxhays Road in Reading. Her 4 children were out of the house.
It's a really quiet neighbourhood. Everyone looks out for everyone. I've lived there 16 years and I've never locked the door because I don't need to lock my door. I don't have no problems. I was going to go to the gym and then I thought, no, I'm going to have a bath and go and finish my Christmas shopping.
And Tina also needed to return an item she'd recently bought online. Her call to the online retailer was recorded.
What can I help?
Oh, hi there. I need to return the high chair,
I was in the kitchen.
which I ordered for my friend, but she found it cheaper somewhere else, so I need to send that back. And that is...
I looked down the hallway and there was 2 guys stood there.
Who's that?
One of them turned round and walked straight towards me with a bottle in his hand. The first thing I done was put the dressing gown over my head and he was tipping all this stuff over me. And obviously I couldn't breathe, so I was like, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. It was horrendous. Just kept pouring it. And I was like, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And I was trying to get away from the kitchen because it was so strong that I actually thought I was going to die of the fumes. And then we were scuffling down the hallway, and then we got into the living room. We were scuffling and I managed to get to one window. And as I got to it, he pulled me back. I remember the telly falling on the floor. We went right over to the sofa and then he punched me. And at that point, I see stars. That hurt. I thought I was just going to pass out. We fell into the Christmas tree. And then, I don't know how I done it, but I managed to get out, dive out of that front room window. And as I dived out, they ran out the door.
CCTV captured the attackers fleeing, whilst Tina can be seen escaping out of the window.
I jumped over the fence, ran into my next door neighbour's house. A girl from across the road come, and then her mum come over and was like, your throat's hanging off.
During the attack, Tina's jaw was broken in 2 places, and one of the cuts to her neck narrowly missed an artery.
Obviously, he lost the blade, which I'm thankful for, because if he's carried on with the blade, I don't know. The only thing I felt was that punch was hard. So why would anyone do this? What have I done so wrong to someone to want to come in my house and kill me? If I didn't get out, I know it wouldn't have stopped. That's how I got out the window. I just kept picturing my daughter. How she would cope if I wasn't here. I was going to die and never see my kids.
One of my sergeants came running through to say there'd been a serious attack in Whitley, and the details as they were coming through sounded horrendous. We'd had a call from a neighbour who said that a female had been stabbed in the neck and had had acid thrown in her face. This was 11:15 on a weekday, broad daylight. In circumstances like this, everybody drops what they're doing, everybody pitches in together, and so from the outset we flooded that area to try and understand what had happened. We looked forensically, both at Tina and both at the scene itself. We had specialist crime scene investigators attend to make sure that we could obtain any forensic, be that marks, prints, DNA, any objects that may have been left behind. Our victim, obviously seriously injured, lucky to be alive, and no clear picture as to why this has happened or who's done this.
The attackers were caught on CCTV before and after the attack, but their identities remain unknown.
Tina has really stoically supported this investigation from the start, at real personal cost to her, and we really, really want to get justice for Tina.
It's massively affected me. Because obviously it happened when I was on my own. Now I won't go nowhere. I don't trust no one. Don't really speak to no one no more. I've been left with nothing. And so have my kids. My life's never going to be the same. Ever.
I'm now joined by DI Laura Corscaden, who's leading this investigation. Laura, thank you for coming in. It's a horrific attack. We even heard the audio there as she was on the phone as it was unfolding. How is the victim now?
She's obviously incredibly shaken by what's happened, and she's had to leave the family home she's felt safe in for 16 years. It's been life-changing for her, and she's just grateful that her children didn't witness what happened to her that day.
Absolutely. Well, can you just remind us the key details of what did happen that day?
OK, so this took place on the 17th of December in 2021. The victim was home alone in Foxhays Road in Whitley. Her oldest children were at school, and her youngest child had been collected at about 10 o'clock that morning by her ex-partner. Between 10:30 and 10:40, the victim was on the phone to an online retailer when she turned and saw two men standing in her hallway. The first male ran towards her and started pouring an acidic substance all over her, whilst the other male stood guard at the front door. She struggled with the male in the hallway, trying to fight free. That took place further then into the lounge, and she fell to the floor. While she was on the floor, they continued to punch and attack her. She did manage to escape through the front window in the living room outside and called for help for her neighbours, and the suspects then ran out of the door and fled.
It's an absolutely chilling attack, and in addition to the punch, I mean, you are treating this an attempted murder, showing the severity of what happened. A blade was used as well.
That's correct. So the punch broke the victim's jaw, and she received a significant cut across her throat using a blade.
OK, now you did retrieve some CCTV. This could be crucial to the investigation. We're going to play it now. Can you just talk us through what we can see here? OK, it happens very quickly, but you'll firstly see our victim come out of that front window, and then the suspects exit through the front door. She's climbing over her neighbour's wall, calling for help as they run away along Foxhays Road. OK, and there we can see the second suspect just leaving, and both of them now running down that road we can see here, and the second one just following here shortly behind. And this could, of course, be significant to the investigation. And we can see on a map now, what do we know where they went from this?
So we know they obviously left through the front door and ran along Foxhays Road. They ran in the direction of Wimbledon Road, along Foxhays Road, and then they turned right into an alleyway onto Wentworth Avenue, which is where we've lost them. OK, so we need as much information as possible as to what happened after that. So what can you tell us about the suspects that you so desperately want to identify? So the two males have been both described as black males. One of the males is described as 6 foot tall and a bit broader build than the other, whereas the other is slightly shorter and a bit of a leaner build. Both were wearing dark clothing, tops and bottoms, had medical masks covering their face and their hoods up. They've got high-vis jackets on, and you'll see one of the males has got a more distinctive blue band around the middle of that high-vis jacket. And we just see another image here. This one could be significant because the mask appears to have slipped on this individual, and someone may recognise. If we can just see that image there where the mask has come down. Here we go. That could be significant. Yes, yes, someone will recognise that male.
Now, I know you are passionate about this case. You want to do everything you can. How can our viewers help you today?
We really are appealing for the public's help to help us identify these suspects so we can get justice for Tina. Someone will know who these males are. Someone will recognise that male with his mask down. If you heard or saw anything in Foxhays Road, if you've heard anything since this has happened that will help us identify the persons responsible, please help us.
Laura, thank you. If you've got any information that could help identify the two attackers, then the number to call is 08000 468 999. First, in 2018, 16-year-old Aman Shakur was shot and killed. 5 years on, and no one has been charged with his murder. This is the tragic story of what happened. And just to warn you, this film understandably contains some difficult details.
Your mind is just numb. You can't actually believe something like this could ever happen to a child.
In April 2018, schoolboy Aman Shakur was living at home with his family in Walthamstow.
He was a regular young 16-year-old. He was finding himself, he was finding his personality, what he was all about, what he wanted to do. He used to love going out with his friends, and he just came across as a lovely boy. On the evening of 2nd of April 2018, Aman received a phone call from one of his friends asking him to come out. Aman said, look, I'm tired now, but his friend insisted.
Aman cycled to Walthamstow Leisure Centre.
We know that he had at least 3 friends present, but there are other people close by that he may know or may not have been aware of, but there was a slightly larger group.
Just before 10 p.m, a white Hyundai pulled up near the group.
2 people have got out of that car. One has a large machete. And one has a shotgun.
Aman was shot, once in the arm and once in the face. Then the attackers turned their attention to the rest of the group.
A friend of his has been attacked very violently with a machete. After this very brutal and very quick attack, they have then fled the scene.
The gunman was captured fleeing on CCTV. The white Hyundai was later found burnt out.
I had a feeling inside me that something wasn't right. Without telling anybody, I picked up my car keys and I just got into the car and just started driving. And when I got to the bottom of our road, the area was cordoned off with blue tape. My nephew happened to be there at the time, and then he told me, said, Aman's being shot. I just sort of froze in shock because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 1 minute, he's at home having his meal, and then next minute he gets called out and this happens. Just beyond comprehension.
Overnight, surgeons fought to save Aman's life.
We had a feeling that it wasn't good. However, you know, you live in hope. On the following day, I remember it was 2:30 in the afternoon. The surgeons told us that it was too late, basically, that nothing could be done. That was one of the most hardest things that I've ever lived through. We couldn't believe this was happening to us. You know, I was just hoping it's a bad dream and we're just going to wake up and it will all be over.
At 2:30, Aman's life support was turned off.
Aman was a very strong boy. From 2:30 to 5:45 p.m. that afternoon, he managed to survive on his own. It was at 5:45 that day when he passed away. Your life changes permanently.
With a 16-year-old schoolboy dead, police are bewildered as to what may have been the motive for this apparently senseless crime.
Aman happened to be talking to people or associating with people on that evening who may have been the target. And so the pure motive has never really been established.
We're still baffled, you know, why did this happen? Who did it? Why would they want to do it? What could a 16-year-old have done, which was so bad, to be shot in the face? You've actually taken it upon yourself to take someone's life, given a lifetime of grief and misery to a family who you don't even know.
5 years on from the murder, Aman's killer remains at large.
I believe that there are people who are present who know who have committed this murder, and we really need them to come forward and tell us what they know so that we're able to progress this for Aman's family.
The one thing which would give us a little bit of peace in our hearts would be some form of justice. One day, I'm confident that justice will prevail.
Well, I'm joined by DCI Kelly Allen, who is the Senior Investigating Officer on the case. Kelly, thanks so much for coming in this morning. This is an absolutely devastating case. The family must be utterly heartbroken. How are they doing nearly 5 years on from this brutal murder?
Yeah, as you said, they are devastated. They are completely shocked by Aman's murder, and without identifying who's responsible, they're unable to grieve and move forward.
Of course, such a hard thing to come to terms with when they still haven't got the answers that they need. So just remind us of the key details of what happened that night.
Yeah, so 2nd of April 2018, it was a normal evening for Aman. He was at home with his family. He was playing on his game console. Around 9:30, he received a phone call from a friend, and he arranged to go and see his friend at Walthamstow Leisure Centre. There were a couple other people there, we think about 4 people. About 10 o'clock, a white Hyundai has arrived and parked by the gates of Walthamstow Leisure Centre, and 3 people in the vehicle. 2 have been seen to get out of the vehicle wearing dark clothes. One had a shotgun, one had a machete. They've approached Aman and the group and have shot Aman in the face and attacked his friend with a machete.
It's horrendous, it really is. Now, we've got a map which just helps to illustrate the route that the attackers took after the attack. You can see Walthamstow Leisure Centre here in the middle. Where did they head after that?
So after the shooting and the machete attack, they've run off on foot and rejoined the vehicle and left along Queen's Road.
And then we've got another map which shows where they headed after Queen's Road.
Yeah, so although we're not entirely sure of the route between Queen's Road, the car is found burnt out in Durban Road.
We've got an image of a car a bit like the one in question, white Hyundai iX35. What else have you managed to find out about it?
So we know that the vehicle was stolen in the days leading up to the murder and then used in this attack before being burnt out in Durban Road.
And we've got some CCTV which we can show, just a very small clip where you can just see the white Hyundai there.
Yeah, you can just make it out as it's leaving after the shooting.
We've also got another small piece of CCTV which shows an attacker, is that right?
Yeah, so after the shooting, this is the best footage we have of the shooter leaving the scene in dark clothing and, as you can see, white trainers.
Is there anything else you can tell us about the suspects, Kelly?
So we know that there were 3 suspects, a driver, 2 that have got out. We know that they were in dark clothing and 1 with white trainers, but other than that, we have limited details.
What more do we know about Aman from listening to his father in the film there? He was clearly a much-loved young man.
Yeah, a very quiet, very family, friend-orientated, liked to games consoles, like lots of boys of that age. We really have no idea why Aman would have been targeted.
Now, there is a reward in connection to this case, isn't there?
Yeah, so Aman's family and friends and community have come together to raise £50,000 for a reward for the arrest and conviction of those responsible for Aman's murder.
Exactly how can the viewers watching this morning help?
So it's just a plea really for anybody who was there at Walthamstow Leisure Centre on the 2nd of April, anyone who has seen the attack, anyone who knows who's responsible, anyone who's seen the white Hyundai either at Walthamstow Leisure Centre or prior to it being burnt out in Durban Road. It's been 5 years. We know that allegiances change, so we're really just appealing for anybody who knows to come forward and give this family what they need to be able to grieve for their son.
Yeah, absolutely, Kelly. Thank you so much. Aman was just a 16-year-old boy with his whole life in front of him. All this series, we're bringing you the extraordinary stories of detective work that's gone into solving some of the biggest crimes that have made the headlines. And today, it's how detectives in Bristol successfully tracked down the teenager terrorising strangers at knife point.
I've been a detective for around about 18 years, and I can say myself that it started to make my blood run cold. The violence that was shown at that attack, there can have been no motive for that other than murder.
Door may not hold.
On the 30th of October 2019, Dr. Adam Towler, a former trauma specialist, was having a quiet night at home in the Clifton area of Bristol.
I heard a knock on the door. I answered. And a man pushed in. He pulled me outside. There was this big blow to my chest, and I was taken by surprise. He kept coming at me. He was sort of becoming more frenzied and then calming down. And eventually he left and he walked off. It wasn't until I got back in my house that I realised I'd had a stab wound to my chest from a knife. So I went out to the neighbour, and whilst I was trying to summon help, the attacker came back out of the park. And I just got to the door. I remember getting inside, and then there was a tussle at the door when I was trying to push it closed and he was trying to push it in. And that was the point at which I called 999.
What's location emergency, please? I need an ambulance. I am injured. There is a man with a knife who injured me. Where are you injured, sir? Head bleeding, abdomen, maybe chest. It's a bit hard to be coherent.
My breathing was getting worse, and I was just thinking that I hope they get there quickly.
I'm bleeding. He's battering the door. Is that him at the moment? Yes, sir. Yes. I can hear that.
I was thinking, if this door doesn't hold, I'm just going to be in a heap on the ground. I can't fight back anymore.
The door may not hold. Banging it hard.
That was scary.
4 police units arrived at the scene, and Adam was taken to hospital. He had been stabbed 7 times. One stab wound was only millimetres from his heart.
I remember a sense of bewilderment, almost a sense of unreality. You think, did this really happen to me?
It appeared to be a completely random attack, so detectives at Avon and Somerset Police feared the male could strike again. DCI Christina Windsor led the investigation.
We've got a golden hour in which to gather evidence to help us try to identify an offender who could strike again at any time. And actually, will the next person be as lucky?
The police visited Adam in hospital and got a basic description from him. He described the attacker as wearing a Parker-style jacket with the hood up and trousers with distinctive coloured knee patches. Detective Inspector Mark Newbury was duty sergeant at the time.
We were able to use that description to look at the CCTV in the area, and it produced somebody caught on camera who walked into the area and then was running away from the area after the incident. So although the incident wasn't caught on camera, the movement of this person before and after suggested that they were our most likely suspects. This was our first major breakthrough, that we had someone who matched the description and was acting suspiciously. My team tracked him across Bristol to a small residential area in South Bristol, and then we couldn't find him any further, so that became a significant point in the investigation. We believed he was heading towards an associate's address or a friend's address, and we started to look at that area.
3 weeks into the investigation, the police in Bristol received reports of another attack in the same area of the city.
A man had finished work and he was sat on a bench and he had his headphones on, listening to music and downloading music, when suddenly the attacker approached him from behind, tipped his head back and slashed him across the face. He then ran off.
The following night, there was another attack, this time on a young woman.
She had walked to her home address in Clifton. When she'd gone through the front door, moments later, there was a knock at the front door. When she opened it, a male wearing a Parker jacket with a hood up, holding an object above his head, grabbed her around the waist and pushed her inside. And at that exact moment, a male resident at the address came out and scared the gentleman off, and he ran off.
The police were called and they chased him to a nearby railway station.
When he was arrested, he was found in possession of 2 knives, and he was wearing this Parker jacket with a hood up and a fur-lined edge to it, and trousers with the distinctive knee patches.
The person that we had in custody initially had actually given false name and false details, but quite quickly the team, with a little bit of investigation, managed to find out his true identity. Chance Maximum, a 17-year-old juvenile previously unknown to police. He was interviewed for all 3 offences. When they interviewed him, he denied any involvement and then refused to answer questions.
The police did an identity parade, but he was not picked out, and without hard evidence, officers were left with no choice other than to release Chance Maximum on bail.
We knew we had the right person, but it was just getting the evidence to prove it.
We looked at his phone and then we started to understand that there were screenshots taken of the first victim's front door. There'd been Google access to the media articles of what happened, and it was really starting to paint a very concerning picture for me. And if I'm honest, there were nights that I went to sleep thinking about it, worrying if I was doing the right thing by not bringing him in, but like it's circumstantial evidence.
A couple of weeks later, the forensic results came back.
The blood from the second victim was on a knife that had been seized from Chance when he'd been arrested, and it was also on the sleeve of his jacket. There was blood from the first victim on each of his trainers, and at that point, I was like, right, that's it. This is the point at which we bring him in.
Chance Maximum was convicted of attempted murder, grievous bodily harm with intent, and possession of knives, and was given a life sentence with a minimum of 12 years. He refused to say why he carried out the attacks.
One of the challenges is there was no obvious motive, and that made it harder to deal with. You don't suddenly get over things like this, so they're always with you.
Despite being a detective for so many years, such a violent attack is something unlike anything I've seen before. Knowing that such a dangerous offender who was prepared to commit such significantly violent acts with absolutely no motive is now off the streets is a real comfort to me and a comfort to our communities.
Just so chilling. We had Dr. Taylor on the programme last year and he spoke so powerfully about what happened.
The details below.
In 2022, female joggers were being approached and assaulted by an unknown man in Bristol, but police set up a covert operation to find and stop him.
In March 2022, police in Bristol began receiving reports of a series of sexual assaults, all in the early hours of the morning and all in the Bishopsworth area.
We had 4 reports of different women, all on their own. Some of them had headphones in, so they didn't see the perpetrator coming up behind them. The victims, when they came to us, were extremely traumatised, you know, really distraught, really upset about what had happened. This was a stranger attack, really, really frightening.
When the victims all gave similar descriptions of their attacker, police suspected they were dealing with a serial offender.
It seemed to be escalating, and if we didn't act quickly, I was absolutely certain we would have had a more serious offence occur in that area.
Police began trawling through CCTV, taken in the areas where the attacks took place, and they found this.
He suddenly starts following our victim. He sees her, he follows her as she runs up the hill. He puts a face mask on and then runs off after her, and then it goes off for camera. That was enough to give us a clearer description of actually who this person was, what he looked like, how he ran, how he behaved.
Detectives had seen enough and decided to try and catch the attacker red-handed.
Due to the escalating behaviour, we took the decision to put out an operation and put people out in plain clothes in that area that night.
The team focused their efforts on a bus stop and junction where the man had been seen regularly.
That particular evening, the team consisted of approximately 8 people. They went out as it got dark and carried out the covert tactics and around waiting, watching.
After a few hours, officers spotted a man loitering around the bus stop.
Very few buses go through there at that time in the morning, and from the images from the CCTV and the way he walked, they became suspicious of this male. So the decision was made, one of the officers would approach this male, and the male actually started talking to the officer, asking them for a lighter. And as they talked to him, his story didn't quite add up of why he was there and what he was doing. And you know, the officer's opinion, suspicion was raised that actually we think that's him. That's when we decided that we would arrest him.
"27-year-old Craig Pearsall lived locally and had no criminal history. He refused to talk, so officers began searching through his mobile phone and computers. On them, they found evidence of more crimes.
We were able to identify that actually he'd filmed numerous victims on his mobile phone, clearly following further people other than the known victims we had. So we started to try and piece together his behaviour, his offending, and try and identify further victims.
Police also found evidence Pearsall had been secretly filming up women's skirts, and detectives were able to identify and inform one of his victims.
The victim had been filmed by Craig Pearsall from behind, where he'd filmed under her skirt, and had then continued to follow her. So we were able to identify the locations and managed to identify her home address, and that's when we went and spoke to her. I identified and informed her that she'd been a victim of upskirting. She was absolutely mortified by that, had no idea that she'd been a victim of crime, had never seen Craig Pearsall before, and was extremely shocked by what we were telling her.
A trawl of Pearsall's computer also revealed evidence that he'd been trying to obtain indecent images of children.
This painted a horrible picture of an individual that was a predator towards women and lone females, but also showed this hidden predatory behaviour towards children.
Pearsall was sentenced to 3 years and 10 months in prison and was added to the sex offenders register for life.
Craig Pearsall was, in my opinion, a dangerous individual. He is a predator, a danger to women.
When I leave the house, I find that I am anxious. I still find the sound of running footsteps behind me extremely frightening.
Ever since that day, I feel like my entire life has plummeted. It's hard to put into words the way he has affected me and my life. I can no longer walk down the road on my own, even if this is in the middle of the day, without this crushing feeling of fear.
Without the victims coming forward, being brave and reporting these incidents to the police, Craig Pearsall would still be out in the community, and I have no doubt that he would be continuing to offend.
Such fast work there to find their suspect. Michelle.
Now, 20 years ago, a change in the law meant that in limited cases, someone found not guilty of a crime could be put on trial again if substantial new evidence emerged. Our next story is a landmark example of this law in action.
She was very generous, very sweet, fun-loving. She was intellectual. She liked to write poetry. Jackie and I were very close as sisters. There was only 13 months between us, but there wasn't anything we didn't tell each other.
Jackie and Kathy Montgomery grew up together in London in the 1970s. When their parents split up, 15-year-old Jackie went to live with their dad. But the sisters remained close until 1 week in the summer of 1975.
I met up with Jackie in the daytime and we went to the park. We sat there for about an hour and a half, chatting away and laughing.
But that evening, they would say goodbye for the final time. On the evening of Saturday, 31st of May, Jackie's dad went out.
Jackie, I'm off, love.
Leaving her at home alone. When he returned, he made a horrifying discovery.
She had been stabbed 5 times to the front, and she had been stabbed once to the back. There was evidence that a struggle had taken place. The phone was off the hook. There was a chair that was overturned. She looked as though she'd been sexually assaulted. She also had the cord, the flex of an electric iron wrapped around her neck, and there were certainly signs that Jackie had fought for her life.
It destroyed my life. I didn't know how to grieve. None of us did. It destroyed my dad, completely and utterly destroyed my dad. And I'd see him crying, and that man never cries about nothing. A very hard man, my dad was, but it broke him.
Police quickly identified a prime suspect. In the months before her murder, Jackie had spent time with her aunt, who had an abusive partner. His name was Dennis McGrory.
We knew straight away it was him. We knew before he was even arrested it was him. He was violent to my auntie, always drunk.
It is believed that on the weekend of Jackie's death, he found out that his ex-partner was in a relationship with somebody else, which may have fueled his rage. It was believed, certainly by police at the time, that he was at the address trying to find his ex-partner.
Where are you? I know you're here!
Police suspected that, when he discovered she wasn't there, he turned on Jackie.
When he was detained, he had visible signs of injuries to his face, to his arms, to his hands.
In 1976, long before DNA evidence was available, McGrory stood trial for Jackie's murder. But he was acquitted.
He was laughing in the dock. He was big like a Cheshire cat, smiling. No one could believe it. It was so upsetting. For him to get off of it, as well as losing her, it was just a double whammy. I just wanted justice for my sister. That's all I've ever wanted.
For nearly 40 years, the case went cold. Until, in 2015, a television programme gave Kathy fresh hope.
I was watching a documentary on the TV, sitting in bed, and it was about this woman, and she managed to get the murderer of her daughter rearrested, and they called it double jeopardy. Well, my mouth just dropped.
In 2005, a change to the law had come into force, allowing a suspect to be tried again for the same crime if there was new and compelling evidence.
The first thing in the morning, I rang up Islington Police Station and I said I'd like to report a cold case murder.
The police agreed to review the evidence from the original investigation.
There's only one opportunity to reopen a case under double jeopardy legislation, and the bar is set very high. A check was done with our registry to see whether or not we still had any files relating to the murder of Jackie. We had a box of original statements that were made by witnesses at the time, and we subsequently found that we also had a forensic file. And within the forensic files, there were still swabs. We were hopeful that the material that was found, the swabs that were found on the file, would contain DNA evidence.
43 years after Jackie's murder, police were able to obtain a full DNA profile of her killer. Police already had DNA from Dennis McGrory, taken in 2009, when he was convicted of domestic violence. And when they compared the two samples, they matched.
It was actually quite emotional, receiving that phone call. It was monumental. The evidence that we now had suggested very strongly that Dennis McGrory had not only murdered Jackie, he had also raped her.
By now in his early 70s, Dennis McGrory was re-arrested. And on the 2nd of February 2021, 46 years after Jackie's murder, the Court of Appeal quashed his acquittal.
When we actually got him arrested, I can't even put into words how I felt. The relief of my heart, it just melted.
Dennis McGrory was found guilty of the rape and murder of Jackie Montgomery. He was sentenced to life and ordered to serve a minimum of 25 years.
You have shown not one iota of remorse or compassion for Jackie or Jackie's family. I can only hope that your conviction and the sentence I pass will provide them with some closure, safe in the knowledge that you have been brought to justice and will hereafter live out your days in prison.
It was a very emotional day to convict somebody who had conducted the most horrific attack on a 15-year-old girl. It's a key message to people who think they've got away with something that happened a long time ago. We will still keep trying. We will still look at cases that are historic, and we do have the means to be able to solve them.
It's been a long time coming, a very long time coming. Now I know justice is done and he's sitting in prison. I feel great. It doesn't bring her back, but justice has been done.
Just incredible tenacity of Jackie's sister there to keep fighting for her.
Now, in our series of films looking at investigations in the headlines, it's the remarkable case of detectives in Avon and Somerset who ensured that the man that caused a lifetime of pain for his victim was sent to prison twice for the same crime. This film contains some very upsetting details.
She was strong-minded. She didn't follow the rules. She never did. She was always rebellious.
Jackie Kirk lived in Bath, near her two children.
She had her own will. Yeah, we loved her for it.
In 1995, Jackie began a relationship with Stephen Paul Craig. On the 18th of April 1998, the couple went for a day out and stopped in Weston-super-Mare.
I was on duty in the CID office on the Saturday morning, and I was informed that an accident had taken place where a female had been badly burnt.
Jackie received burns to 35% of her body and was put in an induced coma. Her partner Stephen Craig gave his account to the police of what had happened. He claimed that, in a car park, 2 boys had pushed Jackie just as she was using a plastic bottle to put petrol in the car.
He says petrol went up in the air and came down on top of her. She then got back in the car and insisted on having a cigarette. And upon lighting the cigarette, in his words, she went whoosh, and she just was engulfed in flames.
But suspicions were raised by a nose injury that doctors felt had been sustained before she was set alight.
It got me thinking about the account that Stephen Paul Craig had given me. I was confident that Stephen had some involvement into how Jackie Kirk became led at Frenchy Hospital, horrifically burnt.
The police started looking into Stephen Craig's background. They'd been contacted about a number of domestic disputes between the couple, but there wasn't enough evidence to warrant his arrest. After nearly a year in hospital, Jackie was finally strong enough to give her account of what had happened.
She tells me she decided to put the petrol into the fuel tank, and she just remembers Stephen Paul Craig attacking her. She remembers a cold liquid pouring on the back of her head, and then she just remembers a flame going across her face and then horrific pain. I was stunned and shocked how a human being could do that to another human being.
Jackie told the police that the relationship had been abusive and how Craig had been obsessed with a scene from Reservoir Dogs where a man is seen dousing a policeman in petrol, intending to set him alight.
He would sit there for many hours watching the film. Upon searching his flat, we recovered the Reservoir Dog film from inside a video recorder. What was massively disturbing was that it had been rewound. And when you press play, that scene unfolded.
On the 10th of November 2000, he was found guilty of the attack on Jackie and the rape of another woman. He was given a life sentence and ordered to serve a minimum of 9 years in prison.
The sentencing of the life imprisonment reflects the severity of both these incidents. And I just feel now that hopefully both these women, Jacqueline Kirk and the other woman, are able to go on now and try and rebuild their lives.
Meanwhile, Jackie defied medical odds.
People are shocked. And that's what they see is that. They don't see me.
It was very hard at first walking outdoors because people would stare at her, people would look at her in disgust, people would cross the road from her.
I'm so cut off from, society, life, everything.
She was a fighter. She wasn't going to let anyone tell her what to do. She got up and kept going.
She lived for 21 years in pain and with horrific injuries. And then, on the 23rd of August 2019, she died.
We didn't want her to be this victim. We didn't want her to be this person who suffered with all these horrible things.
The police were notified of Jackie's death and were given the results of the post-mortem examination.
The pathologists found that because of Jackie's injuries, she sustained sort of tightening of her diaphragm, and her skin to her body effectively wasn't as flexible as it should have been. She also was suffering from breathing difficulties as well. The doctors and pathologists formed a joint view that Jackie's death was still as a result of the injuries she had suffered way back in 1998.
A new investigation was launched, this time for murder. DCI Mark Armand led the team.
We knew he had committed the crime. So my team spoke to a number of expert witnesses, doctors and clinicians who were experts in respiratory conditions and burns, but also the people who had treated Jackie over the years to kind of give their medical expert opinions as to whether those injuries she sustained back in 1998 still had a causational effect on her death.
Craig had served his original sentence and had been living as a free man. But in June 2021, police were able to arrest him again.
You're going to be arrested on suspicion of the murder, okay? So you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely in court. Okay. Anything you do say may be given an evidence. Yeah, I'm sure it has. All right?
So she died from her injuries?
Yeah.
Which now makes me responsible for murder?
That's right, yeah.
After several weeks of trial, listening to some really difficult evidence, the jury came back with a guilty verdict.
Your conduct was sadistic. Anyone who uses petrol in an attack on others must be aware of the level of seriousness of their actions. Deliberately causing really serious injury by fire is likely to involve agony for the victim and the possibility of permanent injury or disfigurement, just as it did here.
He should never ever step foot outside the prison. He is a massive danger to any female that he comes into contact with, and even more so if he forms a relationship with.
24 years after the attack on Jackie, Stephen Craig was sentenced to an additional 15 years in prison for her murder.
I do take some pride in that, and I know it means an awful lot to the family as well that they've finally had proper justice for Jackie.
It just goes to show the tenacity of those officers to make sure that Craig's hideous crime really got the sentence it deserved. In February 2003, postman Paul Savage was murdered in a crime that shocked the small North Wales community of Mold. Now, 20 years on, North Wales police are re-appealing for information about what happened. And joining me to find out more is DI Myfanwy Kirkwood from North Wales Police. Thank you for joining us this morning. First of all, what can you tell us about Paul?
Paul was a 30-year-old husband. He was a father. He'd recently relocated to North Wales from the Greater Manchester area, and he settled in a little village called Gwenaffield, which is just outside the small town of Mold. And he'd started working as a postman from the Mold post office.
So what can you tell us about what did happen to this man?
It was Tuesday, the 4th of February 2003, and it snowed the night before, so there was snow on the ground. He was collected by a colleague to take him to work, and they arrived at the post office in Mold. We know he left there about 6:50 in the morning and made his way to Clayton Road in Mold. Several witnesses saw him and saw him on his round. He propped up his bike outside a property called Coles Hill, and that's where he made his final delivery. He returned to his bike and two men attacked him. They hit him about the head and he lay unconscious on the ground. He was discovered by the homeowner and he was taken to hospital, and sadly he died a few hours later.
It's an absolutely horrific attack, isn't it? And I know that evidence has actually been quite hard to come by. And why do you think that could be?
The attack happened in broad daylight. There would have been people walking around, going about their normal business, going to work, taking their children to school. But we haven't had any witnesses that actually saw the attack itself, and there's no CCTV like we would have now.
So if this had happened today, people would have things like dash cam footage and video doorbells, and of course 20 years ago that wasn't there, and that's really made things difficult.
Absolutely, it just wasn't available to us then. But what we do know is witnesses saw two young males dressed all in dark clothing just after the attack, walking down Clayton Road towards the town centre of Mold.
And of course they could be vital to the investigation. Now, unfortunately, Paul's family couldn't be here today, but his mother has given us a statement, and it reads: "That day, I didn't just lose a son, a wife lost her husband, a child lost her father, A grandmother lost her grandson. They took him from us. I cannot rest until I get justice for him. I have continued to remind people of what happened. The anger and the bitterness is always there. I will not give up. I mean, it's very powerful words, isn't it? We need to find out who did this for the family. They need some sort of closure. This has meant so much to them. Can we just talk about the weapon that was involved? Because you said he was hit over the back of the head,
yes,
and he died later from his injuries. And it's a very distinctive weapon, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite unusual. As you can see here, it was actually part of a staircase, so it was a banister, and it's been made into a weapon. So those 4 images that you can see there is how it would have started out at the top. And then we know it was painted the lavender colour.
So these are different layers,
yes,
of paint that, yes, have gone over. OK.
That's right. So somebody has taken this from a staircase and made it into a weapon. You can see there it's had a handle at the bottom, and then at the very bottom there is how it would have looked when they used it to attack Paul.
So the image where it's black at the bottom of the screen, that's what it would look like. It was obviously fashioned, yes, to be, because it's got something round by the handle area.
That's it. So it had tape round the handle. It's very heavy, made completely of wood. And we know that this is the murder weapon. We found it after extensive searches on Clayton Road, down a drain. And the forensic results show us that the paint matches the paint that was in Paul's hat. OK, so it's definitely the weapon, yes, that was used. You need to know who had it, where it's come from. Yes. Now, you believe someone in the local community will know something about this? Yes. We need the community's help. Somebody knows something. It's such a small town. Something like that doesn't happen without people knowing about it. I urge them to come forward. Do you know who these attackers are? Did you see them that day? Do you know where that handrail come from, or seen it used as a weapon before the attack on Paul? And if anyone is sat at home and they may have those answers, but they still need that further incentive to come forward, there is a financial reward that's been put up by Crime Stoppers. There is. There's £20,000, which has been renewed on the anniversary of the 20 years, so that is available still. OK, thank you. And hopefully someone at home can do exactly that and get in touch. Thank you, Michelle.